Rapids, Iowa. The AC-Delco Challenge Series visits the upper Midwest one more time here, and we're back to oval racing at the Hawkeye Downs Speedway. Under beautiful weather conditions, well, we get tired of talking about that. On second thought, we never get tired of talking about perfect weather for the fans and for racing here tonight. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Drever, along with Rob Albright, and we're getting ready to get this race underway. We have a very exciting night, and of course, the last time we were at an oval, we were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and things were very exciting up there, but we're in a different rapids. This time, though, I decided, some of you might remember the hat thing that we tried on, and so I decided to go for a white hat this time.
But, Brian, that is Dave Sensiba's hat, and he's from Grand Rapids. This is Cedar Rapids. You got to wear the Brad Loney cap when you come here.
I'll tell you what, even with a white hat, I picked the wrong one. But we have a great time here. These people came from Cedar Rapids over to Grand Rapids and said, when you guys get back here to Cedar Rapids, we're going to do an even better job of showing you a good time, and they have certainly done that so far. Another thing that we're getting ready for here, we have got a points battle all over again.
We certainly do, Brian, and with Gary St. Amant and Mike Eddy both having problems last weekend at Brainerd, that means things have really tightened up at the top. Mike Eddy still with a slim lead over Glenn Allen and Scott Hansen. By virtue of that victory, he's made it tight, 6th through 9th, separated by just 40 points. So we've got a real dandy brewing.
Well, the fans here can hardly wait to get this race underway, and it won't be long before we do just that. Of course, we're going to visit with the third member of our broadcast team, and he's with the pole to the real heat of the action and where it will soon be taking place. Here's once again Ralph Shaheen.
Yesterday, the entire motorsports community and those of us here at the Nashville Network suffered a great loss with the tragic death of a very dear friend of ours, Mark Gleckel. He was one of the top producers and directors in our industry, and he will be sadly missed. Our hearts and our prayers are tonight with his wife, Maria, and his entire family. Those of us here at TNN that had the opportunity to work with Mark will truly miss our dear friend. So tonight, we dedicate this race in honor of Mark, and we hope that we can do as good of a job as he always did in bringing you tonight's coverage. So let's get it underway. Mr. Fleck is the...
With the engines fired up, we're getting ready to fire up the action here for the Hawkeye Downs 300. Big racing coming. Cars are circling the track here in anticipation of the green flag. They're taking part in another one of the great traditions of the American Speed Association, the wave lap. The drivers are all waving to the crowd's waving back. And here's the starting grid. Brad Loney, of course, the local favorite on the front row alongside Steve Holtzhausen, making a return appearance after a few weeks off.
On the inside of row number 2, Todd Forbes, after a couple of races vacation, he'll start third in the 7th car, Gary St. Amant. He wins Port City Ford Thunderbird.
Local driver, Dudley Fleck, pilot Gil and J.B. Clark here in front of Pontiac. Dave Sensiba, Brian Rapper, the two rookie contenders from last year alongside each other on row 3.
Previous leading rookie is J.D. Summers in the Fort Weaver State Thunderbird. And Mike Eddy, the points leader and 7-time champion in the GM Goodrich Service HRE Racing Pontiac.
Row number 5, runner up the points right now, Glenn Allen Jr. hot on the heels of Mike Eddy. And Bob Seneca, of course, the winningest driver in ASA history, sits there alongside.
6th row, Kevin Sawinski making a rare ASA start. And Joe Knott, young upstart from Ohio.
Back on the 7th row is Tony Raines, who had a great run at Brainerd on the road course last week. And Matt Kinson making another of his occasional appearance in a Chevrolet here at Hawkeye Downs.
Leading rookie Rick Beebe in the Engine Armor Chevrolet sits alongside Brandon Sterling, another rookie in the Ultra Custom Wheels Baja Chevrolet.
John O'Neill pilots the Quaker State Ford National Burn Foundation Ford, and Pat Bordeaux, another rookie contender, sits alongside the BASF Newcastle Chevrolet.
Row 10, Mike Miller, Scott Hansen, Miller of the Thunderland Atlanta Pontiac, and the Outdoor Racing Wisconsin Aviation Ford last week's winner, Scott Hansen.
Ken Stauffer quietly working his way up the point standings in the Papa Joe's Kinetic Flex Dillon Ford, and Rick Miller, the former rookie point leader in the Extrude Home Powerflow Chevrolet.
Jeff Neal in the Bi-Royal Split-Fire All-City Pontiac alongside the Build-A-Mold Dana Pontiac with Harold Fair.
Tom Jones, a Zero Hero, pilots the Felpro Pacejacks Pontiac alongside Ted Smokestad in the Super American Chevrolet.
Benson protege Eddie Sharp in the Sharp Racing Ford starts on the inside of row 14 along with Bill Baird in the Saturn Machine Allen Chevrolet. Dr.
Yale Conley, the racing surgeon in the Simonson Windows Valvoline Chevrolet, and Steve Shive, both coming through out of the last chance qualifier.
Dennis Latman had a great run last weekend at Brainerd in the Barricade Flasher Ford Thunderbird. He'll sit alongside the DuPont Kendall Imperial Vans Oldsmobile of car dealer Ray Skillman.
And rounding out the field, Cindy Peterson had a rough time of it in the last chance qualifier, but she made the show along with Dale Hirschfield, rounding out the field of 38 cars. are 36 cars.
Well, actually, there are 38. There have been a couple of additions to this starting grid, including these two, Johnny Small and Chris Horn, both from Cedar Rapids. And Tony Roper, who ran in the Super Truck race today, made a hightail trip very quickly from Milwaukee to Cedar Rapids. And he'll go alongside Bobby Gill, who's a very interesting story. Bobby was not here to qualify. It was a local driver who qualified that car fifth fastest, but Gill, having arrived late, will have to start from the tail of the field. So we'll want to watch him early in the race.
A half-mile oval here with a 7-degree banking on one end and almost the same at the other end of the racetrack. Beautiful weather conditions here. I mean, it is just perfect. Cool, actually. We've brought sweaters and jackets, and you'll be seeing them breaking them out later on tonight.
38 cars going 300 laps, 150 miles. A brand new track record. 14 drivers eclipsed Gary St. Amant's one-year-old standard. Brad Loney, the first driver ever to qualify at 95 miles an hour plus. There you see the field breakdown. 17 Chevys, 12 Fords, and I missed the rest of them. There's some Pontiacs and one Oldsmobile in there, too. By the way, our pole sitter wanted us to say before the start of the race, special hello to Don Gavin and Mary Ainsworth of Orlando. And here's some drivers that did not make the race. Tim Kesman, Brad Funk, Darren Law, Carol Anamy, and Chuck Hemmings.
Well, they're on their feet here at Hawkeye Downs because Roger Slack has the green flag out, and he's showing it to him. And he's threatening to wave him, and he does. We're racing at Hawkeye Downs 300 with Brad Loney, the pole sitter, local favorite, on the inside. But he gets a move around on the outside there, and Steve Holtzhausen takes the lead away. We also have a spin at the back of the field over in turn number 1 involving Steve Shive and the 37 car being driven by Dale Hirschfield. Normally, it is the car of David Anspaugh. So the race back to the line there, it looked as though Holtzhausen got there first. In any case, he had taken the lead over in turn number 1 from Brad Loney, which brings back memories of the flag-to-flag Holtzhausen victory in Anderson last year.
A scary moment there at the outset, Brian, as Brad Loney nearly spun going down into turn number 1. The cars had only a few laps to warm up these Goodyear racing tires. They practiced and qualified in the heat of the day yesterday. It's now quite cool, and it's expected to reach a near record low tonight here in the Cedar Rapids area, somewhere in the upper 40s. So that was a scary moment. I think we probably will see, unlike many other sanctioning bodies, a complete restart. Now we're going to take another look at what happened down there in turn number 1. You can see near the tail of the field that Steve Shive down at the bottom of the racetrack in car number 54. And there is Dale Hirschfield making his first start in an ASA event. He's spinning to avoid him. And we also see the number 74, Chris Horn, taking very quick evasive action and nearly contact with the 37 Hirschfield.
It appears as though no one actually touched anything or anybody out there. Apparently it was a close call, narrowly avoided. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, who is with Glenn Allen Sr.
Who is, of course, a crew chief for his son, Glenn Allen.
Counted laps, that incident occurred after the entire field had taken the green flag, so we do consider that an official start. So Brad Loney now will settle in the second position behind Steve Holtzhausen. And it's not the way he wanted to start here in front of the hometown crowd.
That was probably the longest period of time that ever elapsed between the green flag and the end of the first lap there, the official lap. We have counted up a few, though. We will get restarted here in a moment. And again, Steve Holtzhausen, who grabbed the lead from Brad Loney going into turns 1 and 2, is going to be our leader on the restart. Taking a little pressure off, perhaps, the young man. Loney had been out in front here in front of his hometown crowd. Might have been feeling the pressure, leading as long as he possibly could. And this way, well, he can just kind of settle in,
Chevy at the bottom of the racetrack. He was trying to take a spot away from Steve Holzhausen, who was backpedaling very rapidly. Now, we understand that Holzhausen might have had a different view of what happened here verbally. And you can see that it looks like Dave Sensiba's car got a little out of shape, maybe got a little bit loose, and did get into Steve Holzhausen.
Well, he had the front wheels turned a little to the right there, trying to correct. Apparently, the back end did get a little loose on him, and in trying to correct, everyone knows you counter steer into the skid. The two of them almost went around together, but Sensiba managed to avoid it.
Now, Holzhausen definitely was not running as well as he was at the start, but it was an impact there. Rob, what's the story?
Well, of course, Robert, the difference between nighttime and daytime, the track has changed, and now the driver setups are all different. This is one of the adjustable Penske shocks. This is exactly what Holzhausen is running. So when they bring him in under the next opportunity to pit, what they'll do is adjust this right here. It's an adjustable shock system. It'll stiffen up the compression in the shock, change the handling of his car, because right now Holzhausen's car is a little bit too loose. Don't take part with this, though, when you have just as big of a problem pulling the other one.
Pace car on the track, green flag coming up pretty soon. Brad Loney once again back in the lead, and as you said, Rob, Steve Holzhausen, after leading briefly there, starting to head backwards through the field when he came up alongside Dave Sensiba. Sensiba trying to make a move. Loney is leading now. Gary St. Amant running in second spot. Dave Sensiba stayed out on the racetrack, out of trouble. He's run back about 8th spot, and Todd Ford's running third now.
Guy making the strong early move, though, is Mike Eddy. You can see him there taking third position away from Todd Forbes. And the GM Goodrich Pontiac has very quickly gone from 8th to 4th as Brad Loney and Gary St. Amant try to stretch it out over Eddy.
Well, they've actually opened quite a bit of a gap on the 88 Goodrich car, and Gary St. Amant looking very, very eager to put something there on Brad Loney. Now, St. Amant pushing hard from the back. Loney trying to hold the lead, but St. Amant seems to have a rocket ship with the race car out there tonight.
Gary had some problems in Brainerd all second place going into that race, so he'd like to battle his way back to holding the fourth position in points. And there was Todd Forbes. His car was not handling well, so they started he was really sliding backwards in a hurry. There you saw Scott Hansen getting by him, and Hansen started way back in 20th position.
That's more than a handling problem. He's down on power or something serious. Perhaps the gremlins, fuel pickup gremlins that they thought they had chased down and resurfaced. Maybe it's something different, but in any case, Todd Forbes in the 07 machine there. The overturned base stone, the overbody Clifford going backwards. Felt like he was going forwards there during practice and qualifying.
That runs well for a few seconds and then off the pace and on the pace again. No, I think it's definitely something in the way of the fuel pickup problem as everybody's shuffling into the back of the pack and heading down along that road.
Brad Loney leading over Gary St. Amant. Todd Forbes being shown to third there, but of course this was after 18 laps. We are some 22 laps into the race right now. Just giving you a quick rundown from a few laps ago. Todd Forbes shuffled into the back, and indeed he will have to pit under green. Meanwhile, up front, Brad Loney opening a gap on Gary St. Amant, while Mike Eddy has closed out to the bumper of the number 7 car.
And Brian Redford closing as well. So it's a Chevrolet leading, a Ford second, a Pontiac third, and then a second Ford runs in the fourth position. Glenn Allen now has come to fifth, and he'll try to run down this lead quartet.
Well, the crowd has kind of settled down. Whoa! Gary St. Amant goes around with Mike Eddy on his bumper there. He recovers nicely and gets the car back in shape, headed in the right direction. But that was a quick little turnaround. Mike Eddy coming up behind Gary St. Amant. Next thing you know, St. Amant's doing a pirouette. We'll have to take another look at that and see just exactly what was going on. Clearly, they're having some squirrely handling problems. The cars are not doing what they should be doing or what they predict to be doing. Then on the other hand, maybe Mike Eddy knows exactly what he's doing out there. It's usually the case. We'll come back and try to sort it out for you. Once again, the Racing Series has joined forces with Short Track Racing Magazine, the premier publication geared to short track racing fans. For subscription information, call 1-800-468-7876.
And you know, Brian, despite that 360-degree, pretty exciting spin by Gary St. Amant to show you how strongly he was running, he only dropped about 7 spots as he's back in 9th position.
Ralph Shaheen has more on this car, the 07 of Todd Forbes. Ralph?
Brian, it was a flat right rear for Todd Forbes, and he has come in now and changed right side tires and gassed up that Maisto backed entry, so he's ready to go back at it. Interestingly, though, one of the GM Goodrich team members for Mike Eddy ran down to Gary St. Amant's crew under direction from Mike. Mike wanted to make sure that he apologized immediately to Gary St. Amant's crew and made sure that they radioed to Gary and said that it was strictly a racing accident. He was sorry, had no intentions of getting into Gary.
You know, there was a time in the past when Gary St. Amant and Mike Eddy were not the best of friends, but they patched up those problems and have been very close to one another, so I'm sure Mike means that sincerely, and Gary will accept the apology. However, if we see late in the race Gary St. Amant behind Mike Eddy, I don't think he'll show a lot of patient restraint, do you?
Well, it's part of what makes the racing so interesting here, but it's interesting that Todd Forbes' problem was indeed a tire. I kind of brought up that question thinking, boy, the car just was working so bad. And then to see an incident like that, we've seen several now. We're less than 30. Well, we just restarted at 29 laps in, and we've already seen a whole handful of incidents. And to me, it's clear that the changing conditions here, it was nice, warm, and sunny this afternoon, although not real hot like it was last year when we were here. But tonight, it is definitely cool, as you said, perhaps on the way to a record low, and that will really change the track conditions. And I think the drivers are struggling a little bit out there.
And you would think that this would give Brad Loney an advantage, because he's 2 times a track champion here at Hawkeye Downs. Has probably run more laps under the lights than anybody except maybe Johnny Spa, who's been the track champion here most recently. That should give him an advantage, but you don't ever have an advantage over Mike Eddy. And I think Mike may be a little more careful when he tries to put the move on Brad Loney. It's going to take more than a crew member running down to apologize if he turns 33 around.
Well, we saw him dab on the brakes a little bit as he got close to Brad Loney's rear bumper just then. Here's Brian Refner also putting a little bit of heat on. Loney goes a little bit higher out of turn 3 there and then cuts down low, dives in turn 1. And Mike Eddy trying to show him the inside a little bit there, and then he'll need to show him the outside. And we'll see what's going on. The fans up on their feet waving Brad Loney on. Come on, get out there, get away from him is what they're trying to say. Here's some good racing a little bit deeper in the pack as the 87 machine there of Tony Raines putting some pressure on with Joe Knott, and also the 65 car of Kevin Sawinski.
It's Kevin Sawinski. We've seen him a couple of times before. He's driven that Daly car, the number 2 that Bobby Gill is behind the wheel of this weekend, and the Bobby Archer drove on the road course last Sunday.
Matt Kenseth there in the 68 machine. Nielsen Racing Chevrolet also mixing it up a little bit in that group. We go back up front. Glenn Allen Jr. has joined the fray at the very front of the field, and coming up strong in 5th position, just out of the picture here, is the very fast rookie J.D. Summers in the Blue Water Industrial Thunderbird.
And not far behind is Bob Seneker in car number 84.
Bob Seneker's day got off to a pretty good start in Brainerd a week ago, and then ended badly when he had a problem there. An oil line broke loose on a newly installed engine, and many of you may remember the very memorable photos of Bob Seneker tossing dirt in on to put the fire of his own car. Here's Mike Eddy challenging for the lead, and we're seeing a handful of Mike Eddy fans on their feet out there urging their favorite driver on.
Brian, this is so reminiscent of the battle that Mike Eddy and Johnny Benson waged at Berlin and Grand Rapids. Once a car gets alongside, it's so hard to get by. Mike needs to be able to roll to the top side of the racetrack coming off turns 2 and 4. You saw at the top of the show there's progressive banking, 5 degrees down at the bottom, 7 degrees at the top. That means that Eddy is on a more flat part of this racetrack, and that's why he's having such difficulty making a clean pass of Brad Loney.
And Brad Loney, to his credit, the youngster really holding on against probably the best short track driver in the country and on the planet, I guess you'd have to say, because they don't do this as well as we do just about anywhere else in the world.
He's no doubt the best, but he's in the company of a whole host of others that are certainly in that same league. And as we've said before, Mike Eddy makes everybody else a better racer. They know they have to come prepared to be their very best if they want to compete head-to-head with him.
Brian Refner with a front row seat to a great side-by-side battle. Loney seems to get the edge and hold that good line around there, but of course Mike Eddy with the shorter way around the racetrack makes up a lot of ground just by staying alongside. And now Loney goes back clearly to the front. Mike Eddy, well, wait a minute. And now with a little bit of a nudge there, Loney holds him off again. Boy, these guys are going at it.
You know what Mike is doing, I'm sure, is settling back in. He's heating up those right side tires, having to hold that car down on the bottom flat part of that racetrack. Don't expect this thing to be over. Wait a lap or 2, and Mike will make another charge, no doubt about it.
Brad Loney fending off the 7-time ASA champion for the moment, as we are now 41 laps into this 300-lap event. Brian Refner waiting very patiently back there, and a patience that, well, you might say is uncharacteristic of a rookie driver. He was very patient last season, and now as a sophomore driver has been very steadily moving up through the points and has been very, very consistent in his performances throughout this season. Refner running in 3rd spot. number 5 structural transport for Thunderbird.
And they're really stacked up behind these two that we're watching battle for the lead. Behind Refner, it's Glenn Allen, J.D. Summers, Bob Seneker, and Dave Sensiba, then Gary St. Amant and Joe Knott. Brad Loney, this season, 7 races, 7 starts. And though he hasn't won, he's certainly been strong. His best finish was second in the opening race of the season at Columbus, and he has 3 top 5 finishes to his credit. Currently ranks just outside the top 5 in ASA season points.
They're already working into a little bit of traffic here. They're going to need to stay single file. It's unlikely they'll go 3 wide around the racetrack. That is, Mike Eddy probably won't pull up alongside Brad Loney while they're working their way into the tail end of the field here. Brad Loney leading the race. The 7-time ASA champion of the Black Goodwrench 88 following right behind him. And Brian Refner sitting 50 laps of the Hawkeye Downs 300 are in the record books, and Brad Loney has led most of them, consistently getting a challenge, well, early on from Steve Holtzhausen and now from Mike Eddy. They've cleared traffic for the most part, and it's just the 2 of them because they did a little bit better job of getting through the traffic than did Brian Refner and Glenn Allen Jr. Gary St. Amant coming through, though, behind them is doing a good job now. There's the 7 car alongside the 4 of Dave Sensiba and Joe Knott in the 48 coming up. So we got a little side-by-side racing going on back there.
We're going to take a peek at what happened just about 20 laps ago between Gary St. Amant and Mike Eddy. Gary was running second at the time. Coming out of turn number 4, Mike just taps him a little bit. And when you're coming off the corner onto the straightaway, that's all it takes. It was incidental contact, but hard enough to unsettle that wins for Thunderbird of Gary St. Amant. And if you just joined us, Mike sent a crewman down to immediately extend an apology to Gary and his team.
Like he tried to avoid the situation. Gary St. Amant, of course, is so respectful of Mike Eddy, and we asked him, among many other things, just how do you deal with the guy that they call the man around here?
Mike drives the car all out all the time, and when you do that, you put yourself in positions that, you know, you have a chance that you might not make it through that corner at that particular lap, and you know, you don't wish it on him. But in order for this to be a close points championship for this year, it's probably going to have to happen a few times.
Almost prophetic, wasn't it?
Gary St. Amant has an interesting way of looking at things, a very good attitude, a very good race driver. Of course, getting a much-deserved victory this season in the 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series. For his first since 1991, a long time coming and very much appreciated by that very talented young driver. Back up front, Brad Loney, another very talented young driver, still going at it there, working his way around the 74 car, and he gets cleanly by. Boy, he does know this racetrack, doesn't he?
Certainly doesn't. 4 cars, there they are, running literally nose to tail. Brad Loney, Mike Eddy, Brian Refner, and Glenn Allen Jr. Then it's almost half straightaway back to the 5th place car number 84 of Bob Seneker, who's not having quite as easy a time getting through traffic as are the quartet in front of him.
An observation that I made just a moment ago, there are a lot of drivers that are either being much more patient than these guys, or they just don't have as good a race car, because as you say, there's a pretty big gap from 4th back to 5th and then the rest of the field. A lot of guys that might want to come to the front quickly are just not able to do so. Either that or they're just waiting patiently because there's a lot of laps in this race.
And now Brad begins to stretch it out ever so slightly over Mike Eddy, and Glenn Allen Jr. suddenly slows coming off turn 4. The car second in points is off the pace and on pit road as we remain under green, so something definitely awry with a car that was running solidly in 4th position.
Seemed like the car kind of dipping down on the left front there, maybe a front tire, but he's down on power. The car is just about to come to a stop at pit road. He'll be lucky to get to his pit, and he's got a whole lot of, well, fire. Looks like not exactly fire, but certainly something going wrong underneath the race car. A big glow coming from right underneath the center part of the car. Glenn Allen Jr. in the pit. You can't see it here. And we've got a couple of cars into the wall over on the backstretch. Brad Loney will be there in just a moment, and they need to avoid it.
And Rick Miller has just hammered the number 37 machine of Dale Hirschfield, making his first start in the Dave Anspaugh machine. Hirschfield had come together with Ray Skillman. The caution comes out, and it was a hard hit. Several cars made it past these two that had stalled on the backstretch, and then Rick Miller was racing side by side, I believe, with another car and simply could not get down out of that racing groove. And these cars literally are sitting right where they should come off turn 2.
Well, there's cars into the wall, and boy, too bad there for Rick Miller in the 31 car. He certainly could have avoided that did he have a little more warning. just before all this was going on, Glenn Allen Jr., we were talking about going into the pit, and Ralph Shaheen's down there for that story.
Well, his crew is working underneath the hood of the car. Glenn is sitting patiently in it. Glenn, any idea what the problem was with the car?
I don't know really what happened. The car just vibrated a little bit and shut off. We changed ignition boxes trying to get into the pitch, and it didn't fire. So.
Well, he's trying to fire it back up now, so hopefully Glenn Allen Jr. will return to the race here momentarily.
Well, the Gremlins rearing their head there in the number 15 car. Glenn Allen Jr. second in points right now. There's Rick Miller, number 31, the most recent guy involved in the little altercation on the backstretch. We'll sort it all out for you in a moment. A lot going on here. Backstretch, we see the 27 car of Ray Skillman, and also the 37. The car is normally driven by Dave Anspaugh. Dale Hirschfield is with us in this car as the driver, and Ralph Shaheen is with him.
Dale, can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, Ralph, I came off the corner as soon as I got back in the gas. Something I believe in the rear end broke. I want to say it was an axle. One wheel pulled and the other one didn't, and it just turned the car quicker than anything could happen. I tried to keep it out of the wall myself, and I ended up taking Ray with me, and I don't know the third car that come in and picked us both up.
Well, he's okay, gentlemen. Let's update you on two other cars. The Tony Roper entry, the Child's Tire back car. Car number 10 had a sticking throttle on the carburetor. They got that adjusted. He's back out there. And also the number 71 of John O'Neill was in. He broke an arm on the fuel pump. They got that straightened away, and he's back out.
By the way, Dale Hirschfield is hoping to run the full slate next year in a quest for Rookie of the Year. Dana Transport sponsoring him this weekend, and he's looking at a permanent relationship with that company from 1996.
Saw Ray Skillman, of course, very dejected coming in over the saddle. There's the 3 car of Dr. Yale Conley, the racing surgeon from West Virginia. One of the great things about the American Speed Association before the start of the race down on the grid, they have an autograph session. All the fans can go down there and wander around, and, well, I did exactly that. It is really quite a unique opportunity for sponsors such as Simonton to be able to bring their products out here, and when the fans go down on the racetrack, what a great association. They're able to put it right there with the race car. That's what the fans come to see. And, of course, the secondary message, the sponsorships will race for food. 68 laps into the race. Appears in the mailbox. There's always something fun in there. Little fun facts to know and tell. Share with your friends. Come to the racetrack. Hey, did you see the action line? We hear that more often than not here at the races every week. There's the track crew, of course. They seem to have pretty much finished up their work over there on the backstretch where the 37 car and Ralph Shaheen, of course, is right on the spot, and he's with the fellow that, well, was probably the biggest victim of the crash.
That would be Rick Miller. You can see all the damage to the front end of the car, Ryan and Rob. There's torn off brake ducting, torn up suspension pieces. Rick's over here. Could you just not see what was happening in front of you there when you came around the turn?
I just never saw the wreck. I was stopped there, and we were in heavy traffic, and there was a lot of bumping and banging going on in front of me, and one of those deals, I just missed it.
You're okay, though?
Yeah, I'm fine. The car started pretty good. Extrude Hone Chevy was running pretty good, but yeah, that's the way it goes.
You know, Brian, in Rick's defense, I believe that we don't have a replay. I kind of caught the whole thing out of the corner of my eye, and I think he was moving to the outside of another race car. So it was a situation where I don't think he could have avoided it. And it's a testimonial to the structural integrity of these race cars. Man, that was one hard hit, and he was running full bore out of turn number 2. Nobody injured, and that's the good news.
There were 3 drivers involved in the accident. We've talked to 2 of them now. Ralph Shaheen has tracked down Ray Skillman. Ralph?
Well, how are you, Ray? Were you okay? Can you tell me what happened in that?
I'm just fine. The 37 car, I think he said that he lost an engine. He was sideways in front of me, and I started around the outside. I thought that I could clear him there, and he came back across in front of me. We were sitting there a few seconds, and then I guess the 31 car didn't see us and got both of us. But I think we were done after we'd hit the fence anyway. The 31 car really didn't cause much of a problem.
They did try pretty hard to knock that wall.
I think we've pretty well covered that now. And we saw Dale Hirschfield say that he felt something go wrong with the car, and it got sideways. Ray Skillman corroborating what he felt like happened alongside him and addressing the issue of Rick Miller and how he arrived on the scene. So we're getting ready to go back green here. It won't be too long. TNN Motorsports presenting the Hawkeye Downs 300 from Cedar Rapids, Iowa on this 4th of July celebration as the nation gathers to celebrate its birthday. I'd like to extend a happy birthday to my mom. We're back to green flag racing. The whole country gets together to celebrate my mom's birthday. Brad Loney back in front. These fans are loving life here in Cedar Rapids because he's their man.
27 cars, Brian, still shown officially as on the lead lap. We've seen several of them come in under caution, but the leaders have elected to stay out on the racetrack. You'll see that Mike Eddy, Brian Reffner, now Bob Seneker, who's inherited 4th place with the departure of Glenn Allen Jr. These drivers drivers will take a cue from the leader, Brad Loney. They won't come in until he does.
We did see a handful of cars coming in. And Mike Eddy showing Brad Loney the inside again there now that the tires have cooled off real fine under caution. And Mike Eddy going back after the youngster one more time. Brad Loney in the H&W machine. A full field rundown appearing up in the upper left-hand corner, 68 laps. That was just a little while ago, and things haven't changed at all because, of course, we've been under caution since then. 27 cars on the lead lap. Mike Eddy makes another very strong move through on the inside and pulls up next. It's deja vu all over again. About 30 laps ago, these guys were doing just the same thing.
And if Mike is able to successfully complete this pass, I think you might see him ride off for a while, Brian. He just needs to get clear of Brad Loney, and Loney just has dogged determination and is refusing to let him by.
That little bitty word, if, it occurred to me when you were speaking, if Mike Eddy can get past Brad Loney. But Brad Loney is not going to make that an easy job at all. He gets a great drive off the turns up high there, as you mentioned before and analyzed for us, that the banking is a little higher up top. We got another incident down here in turn number 2. We got a car backing up towards the wall.
That's Bobby Gill in the Gill and JB Car Care Products Pontiac. Bobby Gill from Dalton, Georgia, making his second ASA start, a former All-Pro regular. Kind of getting a test ride over a couple of races with the Jim Daly crew. We've seen a lot of drivers in this car over the last several seasons, and Daly seems to be as excited about Gill as anybody. And look at this, Mike Eddy does not want to relinquish that position alongside Brad Loney.
That's right. These two are probably arguing over who was leading when the yellow flag came out. Now Brad Loney goes to the front, apparently under the direction of Roger Slack there in the flag stand and the ASA officials. So we're lining them up once again for a restart. Loco Challenge Series, America's premier short track racing. Under caution right now because of an incident out there involving Bobby Gill, who had started dead last in the field, Rob, and was making his way towards the front, and now, of course, he's right back where he started.
Actually, I had expected him to move up more quickly than he did. He really hasn't lost all that much. He did not go down a lap as a result of the spin, and now he's had an opportunity to come on pit road under caution. That definitely is a strong race car. As we're looking, passing back through the field, and there is Scott Hansen, who's come from 21st on the starting grid to now run in 10th position. The reason he said he qualified so poorly, he said the car had dirt in the fuel, and it just wasn't, getting a clean, he wasn't having a clean running engine. And sitting right in front of him is car number 68, that's Matt Kenseth. And a lot of folks thought this young Wisconsin driver was going to run full-time in 1995 for Rookie of the Year. Major sponsorship just didn't materialize, and he's just running a handful of races, but should he go for Rookie next year, he's going to be a tough contender.
We've got a great rookie crop this year, and we look forward to next year because not only Matt Kenseth, but several others.
Bobby Gill, that we're just talking about, might run Rookie for Rookie of the Year.
Put their name in the hat to run for Rookie next year. Back to green flag racing now with Brad Loney trying to hold off Mike Eddy. He's been successful in doing so on 2 separate occasions in the first 84 laps of this race so far. And now Mike Eddy, though, is nothing if not relentless, and he's going to just go right back at it. And look how quickly the two of them, however, pull away from the rest of the field. They put 3 or 4 car lengths on the 3rd place running car, Brian Refner, in a big hurry.
You know what surprised me, Brian, as we were sitting around with all the TV folks having dinner a couple of hours ago, we were talking about different drivers that we thought might win this race, and the names that you heard most frequently were Loney, Sensiva, and Refner. You didn't even hear Mike Eddy's name. I wonder why.
The young drivers. Let's go down once again to Ralph Shaheen, who's seen the 74 car kind of caught in a revolving door. Ralph?
Well, it was one of the most unusual things I've seen in racing. As we went to the yellow flag here, Yale Conley had a tire go down on his car, the 03 machine, the Simonton Windows backed entry, the 3 car. He got into the side of Chris Horn's number 74 and actually climbed up and over the car, getting the number 3 Simonton car completely up in the air. So both cars have pitted now and changed tires and are back out there.
Back up front with Brad Loney and Mike Eddy still dueling, and the 74 car of Chris Horn circling the track slowly and trying to get back up to speed and into shape. We now have a quartet of cars racing up front as some of the others have gotten themselves sorted out, notably Brian Refner, who's been there, and now Bob Seneker has started to make his move up towards the front. He had started 10th, now runs 4th. Huge pack of right behind them, however. Actually, that's kind of the second pack on the racetrack, racing for about, 12th place or so. But this whole gaggle of race cars has really got a lot of real estate taken up there pretty much bumper to bumper.
Some of them are lap cars, and some of them are drivers who elected to come in under the most recent caution. We see Dave Sensiba, who was on pit road. Jeff Neal, Eddie Sharp, and now Sensiba's out of shape coming off turn number 2. He almost spins. Eddie Sharp does 3/4 of a spin, and he'll refire the red Sharp Racing car number 50 as the yellow is displayed once again. Well, you could just see that brewing.
With as many cars trying to occupy the same amount of racetrack there, you definitely could tell that something was going on. And look here, Sensiba with a flat right front, so he'll definitely have to come in and change that. He's got sparks flying there. He's eating up a right front wheel pretty severely. Dr. Yale Conley coming around and going back in again. And let's see if we can get another look at just what happened here between Sensiba and the incident that also involved Eddie Sharp.
You know, I'm not so sure that Sensiba didn't already have a tire going down in car number 4. I think that might have been what caused the spin.
And then Eddie Sharp hard on the brakes, trying to avoid it. Got a couple of wheels in the grass, and things went poorly from that point forward. Now here comes Sensiba around, all the way around to enter pit road, and Eddie Sharp right behind him. Both of them are going to go in. No, Sharp stays out, and Sensiba the only one going on to pit road. Ralph's down there in Dave Sensiba's pit. Well, we would expect that, Ralph.
Well, the Bill McGowan-led crew is awaiting the sparky arrival of Dave Sensiba. The right front or the right rear down on the ground. You can see the sparks showering out from behind. The crew will go to work on this car. Here the air gun's going to work. One of the members of Mike Eddy's crew actually helping to get hole underneath there to get the car up in the air. They'll change left side tires as well. Actually, they got one of them tightened back up. They tightened up the left rear, and now they send him back underway.
And he was in jeopardy momentarily of going a lap down. It's been a frustrating sophomore season thus far for Dave Sensiba, and he's definitely got something more serious wrong in the right front corner. I think he might have some broken suspension pieces. His best finish thus far was an 8th at Jennerstown after ending 1994 on such a high note with a second-place finish at Jennerstown.
That's something hanging underneath, and it appears to be hanging from a hydraulic line. I would have to say it might be a caliper, a broken caliper or something there from all the laps that he took on that broken wheel. Well, we'll try to find out what's wrong with Dave Sensiba's car and get things collected back up. Here's a look at the field after 92.
No grass fires here, just green corn. ASA on TNN.
Ralph Shaheen down in the Dave Sensiba pit has perhaps tracked down the details on the problem. Ralph?
Brian, what was hanging is the sway bar on the right side of the car. A bolt had come loose. The sway bar is dangling on that side of the car. They'll have to wait till the next opportunity to pit to fix that. In the meantime, 1994 Pat Schauer Rookie of the Year is going to have some differences in his handling from what he was used to at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, only about the inside 3 inches of that tire actually making contact with the pavement as we go back to green.
Brad Loney getting the jump there and trying to hold off Mike Eddy, Brian Refner, and Bob Seneca running in the next 2 spots. Then it's Gary St. Amand, the number 7 Thunderbird, running in 5th spot. That's the top 5. Those are the ones lined up single file right now behind the local favorite, pole sitter Brad Loney. Mike Eddy showing him the inside again.
And he has actually earned, Brian, his 5 bonus points for leading, because there was one lap, I think lap number 36 or 37, when Mike actually crossed the start-finish line just a bumper ahead of Brad Loney. So we've had 3 leaders. Steve Holtzhausen at the green. Brad Loney has led the majority of this race, and Mike Eddy a single lap.
Ralph with a different slant on our 2 leaders down there.
In February, Mike Eddy went down to Speedweeks in Florida and absolutely cleaned up, winning every race he entered down there. There was another competitor down there who was right on his tails night in and night out, a young man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa by the name of Brad Loney. Mike said when he came back, I think Loney learned too much while he was down there racing against me. We might be seeing that battle here tonight. Mike might be testing the waters right now, trying to figure out what Brad Loney knows and what he doesn't know as he races him for the lead and takes it away from him.
3's the charm, and on the 3rd effort, Mike Eddy makes good on a pass. Look at Brian Refner showing him on the inside now. They want to catch Loney high on the rail out there and see if they can both get by. Refner doesn't make it, and Brad Loney holds on to 2nd spot, but Mike Eddy on his 3rd attempt made good on the pass. Will he check out, as you said? Well, we don't know.
And we've got another caution. A couple of cars have spun down between turns 3 and 4. Eddie Sharp again trying to get straightened around before leader Mike Eddy gets there and not go a lap down. And also Dr. Yale Conley in that Simonton Window Chevrolet, car number 3. Didn't see what happened, but both aimed the wrong direction.
Yale Conley trying to get the number 3 car refired there, and the Chevy just not responding at this point. Dr. Yale Conley sitting there trying everything he can. Eddie Sharp got his car collected back, restarted, and out onto the racetrack, and he's now circling around to rejoin the tail end of the field.
It's a talented young race driver. He's not really had much opportunity to show it yet. As I mentioned a couple of times, he is a protege of Johnny Benson. Johnny said, you want to race the best short trackers in the country, go ASA racing. That's how Johnny learned to cut his racing teeth, was in ASA. And Sharp's struggling a little bit. I think he's 6th currently in the rookie points.
Well, the leaders now trying to collect their thoughts just a little bit, with Mike Eddy having gone back. Glenn Allen Jr. has now returned to the race after what appeared to be near terminal problems for the number 15 car, the CarQuest Eaglewood Construction Pontiac. Ralph, what was the final analysis down there?
A broken distributor gear, Brian. They've got that fixed, and Little Glenn is back out there circulating around the racetrack.
He's lost quite a few laps. And Glenn Allen, of course, 2nd in the points battle right now. We talk about this points battle all the time and just who's going to come out on top of the racing season. Mike Eddy has done so 7 times. And a lot of our young fans want to know about this. In fact, 2 of them wrote in with this question. Laps, we'll see in just a moment. And I kind of opened up what some of the people on the rest of the crew thought might have been a can of worms when we said, hey, why don't we get some people to write in and, you know, give us a good reason in 25 words or less why they'd like to be a part of the American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge telecast crew. And little did we realize what it would turn into. We got a lot of entries, but we have the winning entry with us up here. Tammy Hibble has joined us in the broadcast booth and has been part of the good time that we have been shown here in Cedar Rapids. Tammy, welcome.
Thank you.
Rob, we've really enjoyed this whole deal until we announced a winner. And of course, we had no idea how this was going to turn out, but Tammy has been a most welcome addition to our crew. She's been working all over. Tell us some of the things you've been doing.
Long way to top Tammy.
I'll tell you what.
By the way, you got some of the track food?
We do. We actually, one of the things that Tammy wrote in about, if we can get a shot of this, I don't know. We're getting ready to go green flag racing here, so we'll save that thought. As Mike Eddy has joined the battle once again out there in the lead on the racetrack, and in 2nd spot now is Brad Loney. And of course, Tammy, among the many Brad Loney fans out here, you're not really too happy about the situation right now, although now he's showing Mike the fender.
He's going to get back up there.
We should mention that Tammy left her husband Mike at home, which is why she found out how some of the crew
No,
already
kidding,
well into the
Mike.
night. Just kidding.
She
just
behaved
kidding,
herself
Mike.
fairly well, Mike.
Of course, a couple of weeks ago, we had Ralph Shaheen was absent, and one of his friends showed up in what she called the Dump the Chump weekend. Was that your situation? You left Mike at home so you could come here and have a good time? Your family's from here. That's
right.
the truth, though.
Exactly.
And the whole family's sitting right down here in front of the broadcast booth. Look at Brad Loney now shifting towards the back, and Brian Refner, getting a little loose.
Now, Loney was really working on the back end of Mike Eddy rather than concentrating on just keeping a steady line. Now I think that's what he'll do, is he's going to operate in 2nd position, and Refner will now try to put the pressure on as Mike Eddy stretches it out to about 4 car lengths over Loney.
Torch is just handing me a note here in reference to driver number 75, Jeff Neal, in the Pyroil Splitfire All-City Hardwood Chevrolet. He has learned that Jeff will be getting a black flag for jumping the start here as we went to green. So we have found out about it. Apparently Jeff Neal will find out about it shortly.
Boy, it's been a frustrating season thus far for Jeff. A lot of us expected him to, if not having won a race, but be real strong. And now we're getting a correction on that. There will not, in fact, be a black flag.
Okay.
What happens, Brian, is ASA in their booth, they sit over there, and one guy just watches to see when the green flag comes out, and then someone else calls to determine whether or not a pass has been made prior to the green flag. So they reverse what would have been a bad decision.
Racing for 7th, 8th, and 9th here is Joe Knott, and in battle there with Tony Raines, and of course Scott Hansen, who had worked his way up from 21st, as you mentioned a while ago, to 12th. Well, now that's 9th, and look at a little bit of bumping going on there between Raines, Joe Knott holding it steady, and Scott Hansen taking a look at them both.
Tony Raines, who was one of the strongest cars on the track last week at Brainerd, led a good part of that race, ended up finishing in 5th position. Now beginning to show some strength in that Baker Motorsports entry car number 87. That car last year was numbered 78, and Steve Holtzhausen drove it to victory.
Just in front of this battle, of course, is the number 22 car of J.D. Summers. But we have a great race going on here, a little bit deeper in the pack, kind of slipping into the picture there, too, is Steve Holtzhausen, who led briefly at the very beginning of the race and has worked his way back into contention here after getting a spin early on.
Scott Hansen has picked up 1 spot. He's made his way around Matt Kenseth. He came from 20th at the start to 10th and now 9th, and seems to be showing some patience at this juncture in the race as this trio of cars close in on rookie driver J.D. Summers.
Up front, of course, it is still Mike Eddy and Brad Loney. As we pan back up a little bit, we're looking at a great race for 3rd place on the racetrack. Mike Eddy and Brad Loney have opened up quite a bit of a gap on Brian Refner, now getting a challenge from Bob Seneker and Gary St. Amant.
Yeah, St. Amant, who had been relegated to about 8th position after being tapped by Mike Eddy early in the going, has just gradually worked his way back to the front. And suddenly Brad Loney has reeled Mike Eddy again reeled him in once again, as Eddy looked like he was going to drive away. Not so, says the young man from right here in Cedar Rapids.
It's kind of curious, and I noticed something there I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to. It appears as though the two cars are handling very differently on the racetrack. It seems like Mike Eddy's car wants to be a little bit loose, a little tail happy going into the turns, and Brad's car seems to just stuff in a little deeper, a little harder down there, and I don't know. There could be a real handling difference. Maybe it's just driving style. That's the way they prefer to have their cars set up.
Still got a long way to go. Expect 1, perhaps 2 pit stops. Some of the drivers felt that 1 might be sufficient, that this track did not wear out tires, and Bob Seneker gets Brian Refner unsettled just enough to wrestle away 3rd position.
A surgical short track racing move there by one of the best. Bob Seneker showed him a little bit of the inside, got him unsettled enough to keep the foot in the floor, keep the foot in the accelerator, made the pass cleanly now into 3rd place. Bob Seneker in the Bluebird, number 84. Pole sitter a week ago, had some misfortunes, and now back on the ovals, he's right where he belongs.
I think he needed to do that, as Mike Eddy and Brad Loney had pulled to about a half straightaway advantage over the then running 3rd place car of Brian Refner.
Mike Eddy and Brad Loney in a little bit more traffic here. Once again, now it's still that battle for 3rd. Here it's more of a race for 4th place as Refner and St. Amant dueling it out. Bob Seneker in high hopes of setting sail up towards the 2 leaders that are no small distance ahead.
And that time past the start-finish line, rookie points leader Rick Beebe had a rather sour-sounding engine in the Engine Armor Chevrolet car number 6. He's well off the pace down at the bottom of the racetrack in turn 3.
Well, we wouldn't want the rookie battle to be too easy now, as Rick Beebe had worked his way very methodically up into leading in that points battle for the rookies. But now, just as last year, it seemed as though when Dave Sensipa and Brian Refner were going at it, one of them would have a bad race. The next time around, the next one would, and it just kept it close and interesting.
Certainly has been a different sophomore season for these two competitors, as Refner has had things going all his way. Strong runs, 4th in the points, and Sensipa, he's really not that far back, Brian. He's shown at 12th, but that's really not an indication as how fast he's been. He's been fast everywhere. It seems like the mechanical bugaboos have just plagued him all year.
Mike Eddy, again, working through traffic and doing it very cleanly. Brad Loney following about 10 or 15 car lengths behind. Bob Seneker about twice that distance. And we're going once again now. Ralph Shaheen down there in the pit of the Rick Beebe entry.
Well, he has brought the car to a stop, and his crew is taking a look under the hood. They'll be checking to see if they can find what the problem is. No word yet. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk to Screw Chief here in just a minute. We'll see if we can figure out what the problem is. The engine has come to a stop. Dennis, any idea what the problem is with the motor?
It seems like we've lost a cylinder the way it sounds. He said it started missing a little bit. We had him bring it in before anything else happened. We're just checking it out to see how it's going.
Dennis Grossnickel moving over to that 6 car of Rick Beebe from the 18 of Mike Miller last year. And here's Bob Seneker now. And Brian Refner racing hard there in 4th spot. Refner, who had qualified so well in this race, qualified 6th, and he has been consistently among the contenders for the lead in this race. There's Glenn Allen Jr. is caught behind the lead. Of course, Glenn Allen, some great number of laps down at this point after breaking a distributor gear. Here's Brian Refner, who has also started all of the 7 races this season and has been very, very consistent. His best finish, runner-up at Jennerstown, where he qualified on the pole a year ago. Twice in the top 5. He's currently running once again in the top 5.
And he surprised lots of folks, not the least of all himself, with a strong 3rd-place podium run last weekend on the road course at Brainerd. And we've got a battle once again for the lead, Brian, all of a sudden.
Well, Brad Loney is going to get caught behind Eddie Sharp there, although he does make the pass for the lead, and Mike Eddy backs out a little bit. So Brad Loney it looks like he's going to make a successful pass. Eddie Sharp not a factor there, as he looked like he might have been. And once again, the young Cedar Rapids, Iowa driver, the favorite of the hometown fans here, has gone back to the front.
Pit stops may determine the ultimate outcome of this race. Brad Loney, by virtue of his pole position, has the first pit stall, so he'll have no problems getting out once he comes in on pit road. Expect to see these leaders come in at the next caution, Brian. They say normally that you could go about 100 miles on a load of fuel. Theoretically, that would be 200 laps around this racetrack.
Whoa! Saw that one coming. Loney a little too impatient, trying to get inside of Eddie Sharp. Eddie Sharp not getting out of the way like Loney might have hoped. And boy, did young Brad Loney have a little bit of a pucker factor situation there. He had to gather it back up and keep it pointed in the right direction.
I'm sure Eddie Sharp had that same kind of whatever factor situation you were talking about, as he managed to hang on to car number 50. Was trying to stay on the lead lap and was not successful in doing it.
Loney avoiding a disaster there by his own skill, a disaster of his own making, I might add. And well, he got himself into trouble and got himself out of it again. So he remains in the lead after a brief foray there that could have spelled trouble for him. Mike Eddy pushing hard again up from behind, and well, we would have to say that pit stops are going to be happening here very, very soon, as we're 184, 134 laps into the race. Having difficulty seeing the scoreboard from here.
And we've got another caution, as Eddie Sharp and J.D. Summers have apparently come together down in turn number 4.
This might be the caution that they were looking for. It's only 135 laps in. If they went in for fuel now, they'd probably have to do it again. Because, well, actually, no, they wouldn't, because they would be able to run to the end. There's only 165 laps. That would be less than 100 miles. So if they come in for fuel now and perhaps tires, they could go all the way on a fuel stop.
This is the only one that they will absolutely have to make. I think should we see a succession of cautions in the second half of this race, the pack will just take a cue from whoever is leading the race. But I would expect to see that maybe this be the only stop tonight. It doesn't seem to be a factor as far as tire wear.
Well, they're looking at the pace car right now. Gary St. Amant is in the very front position. There's Eddie Sharp. He's collected his car back up again. And J.D. Summers likewise. So they're all lined up pointing to the right way. We're just going to have to see who comes in. There you can see St. Amant. Glenn Allen Jr. apparently will stay out. Of course, he was in the pit for quite a while. He may be able to make up a little bit here. Take another look here at Loney, almost getting himself out of shape.
Well, he had been behind Eddie Sharp for about half a lap. Normally they say just maintain your line if you're the car about to be overtaken. Now, Eddie was on the lead lap, on the tail end of the lead lap, so he had no necessity of getting out of Brad Loney's way. It was Loney's requirement to make it. And Ralph is down there in the Brad Loney pit, and this might be a determining factor in the ultimate outcome of this race, Ralph.
Well, it is going to be a key stop, Rob. The crew is waiting here at the far end of pit road as Brad brings his machine into a stop. Now, one of the keys we'll keep an eye on here later on is whether they come back and change tires again. You might remember last year, Steve Holtzhausen changed right side tires once, came back in, and under the guidance of his crew chief at that point, Howie Leto changed rear tires on the second stop, and that was a huge difference in the performance of his car. Talked to some of the other drivers here earlier today. They all remembered that, and they're all filing that information away in the back of their minds.
But the guy that got the fabulous stop was Gary St. Amant in car number 7, as that Winsport City Ford Thunderbird was out a good 2 or 3 seconds before everybody else, including Loney and Seneker. And there he is, Gary St. Amant, and that is as fine a right side tire change as I've seen this year.
Gary St. Amant getting a good change. Bob Seneker, both of them gaining a spot on Brad Loney and Mike. The fans are up, and with their favorite drivers' autograph cards that they got from the session there, they're enjoying this race a lot. Everyone's got a little something to cheer for, and up here in the booth, we're having a good time. TNN, true #1 network. Go Johnny Spaw. We've got some Johnny Spaw fans, and those of up here. This is Tammy right here. This is Tammy, and that's Rob way over there. And I'm Brian, and here's an address that you can write to. We got to ask Tammy, do you feel like you won or lost when you came here to join us this weekend?
I definitely won. I have had the best time. We've had so much fun, and I've learned so much. It's been great. Everybody's so nice.
Are you going to make another entry in this next crew contest? There's the address.
Oh, yeah.
PO Box 267. The defending fan champ is Tammy, and you got to go a long way to beat her entry of last year, no doubt about it. We're back to green. And the new race leader, because of pit stops, is Pat Bordeaux in car number 44, followed by Brandon Sperling and local favorite Johnny Spaw. None of those three came in. Gary St. Amant did. He's shown in 4th position.
There's Gary St. Amant's car up front. Pat Bordeaux in the 44 entry. That is the BASF FinishMaster Chevrolet. You'll see it there. The red, white, and blue car. Very patriotic entry, you might say. There it is. He is technically the race leader right now. Pat Bordeaux, very talented young driver.
1-point Pat after the second race of the season was second in rookie points. He's had some bad luck the last few times out, has dropped to 7th among rookies, and the real battle is for second position between Brandon Sperling, and he won't be able to hold Gary St. Amant off for long, Brian, because Sperling's on old tires and Gary's got fresh right sides.
Well, Gary St. Amant, like a racehorse heading for the barn, he can smell that finish line, and he takes off for the front. He'd like to pick up some of those bonus points that we were talking about earlier in our analysis of the point situation. For leading this race, all he's got to do is lead one. He'll pick up 5 more points, and at this juncture in the season, 5 points are very important.
By the way, as we approach the midpoint of this race, still 23 cars on the lead lap. And we got a problem in turn number 2. Brian Refner in car number 5 slid off the racetrack, back on course, but not before the caution is displayed.
He got a little bit wiggly down there. It was a bunch of side-by-side racing going on. Perhaps we'll get another look at it. We certainly saw it on the live shot. You're watching Hawkeye Downs 300 live here on TNN. Brian Trevor, Rob Albright, Ralph Shaheen down in the pits, and Tammy Hibble, our guest here in the booth, our fan winner. We are enjoying this night of racing as we approach the halfway mark. Another caution flag flying.
Hawkeye Downs in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You're watching Mike Eddy's pit crew under the guidance of Howard Thomas, going to work on the Goodwrench service pack. Number 88 Pontiac. A surprise pit stop? No, a strategy move. Mike Eddy had gotten right side tires just a lap or 2 before. He decided to come in, take left side tires on. He's got fresh rubber all the way around. He's going to try to go all the way to the end.
Joe Knott and Scott Hansen also came on pit road, along with Matt Kenseth and, of course, Brian Refner. And Refner might have had a problem, so I think he pretty much had to come in. Now, the question is, did they really need those left side tires, Brian? And could that be a disadvantage as these guys now will have to work their way through lap traffic? They've really put themselves in some jeopardy on the restart.
Well, I'd have to say that that's certainly a seesaw. You know, it's a juggling act. You put on better tires and your car works better, but you got a long way to go to get to the front. Joe Knott and Scott Hansen, of course, taking their lead from Mike Eddy, who came in. Ralph Shaheen, any more thoughts on this?
Well, let's ask Howard Thomas. Is that a tough move now because you lose some track position, puts you guys behind the 8 ball a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a gamble, but at least we're 2 tires up on everybody now, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, get the edge.
And don't forget, when you got a driver like Mike Eddy, Mike told me, you know, you don't have to race hard early on, because if you wait 100 laps, you'll lose half of your competitors because their ability to race hard goes away. If you wait another 100 laps, you lose another half of the field as far as their ability to charge hard. Mike Eddy knows how to pace himself. He is a racer's racer. He knows when to charge and when not to, and he feels he'll be in better shape now as they get into the late stages of this event.
Mike Eddy knows how to be patient. I'm not sure. He's Mr. Aggressive every lap of competition.
Well, there's a good look at the 7-time ASA champion, and a lot of the other pit crews are probably wondering right now just whether that sly fox Mike Eddy. How'd you like to be a part of the race team? These guys are listening in, and Racing Electronics, the official communications equipment supplier to the American Speed Association, is giving away a united Bearcat scanner, just like the one you saw, with a 1-year racer frequency membership on each ASA telecast here on TNN. To enter this drawing, among the many that you can enter, send your name and address on a postcard to Racing Electronics, Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte, North Carolina, and you can look just like these guys. That wouldn't be a totally bad thing. We're getting ready to go back to green flag racing. Gary Callis is listening in on a united Bearcat scanner. Halfway into this race, Gary St. Amant back to the front, Rob.
Brandon Sperling second. Brad Loney has made a move around Bob Seneker. He's taken 3rd position, Seneker 4th, and he now is getting some pressure from Tony Raines and local driver Johnny Spa. And there is Seneker going to the high side of Eddie Sharp. He now 1 lap down in car number 50. And Tony Raines is really in a strong, challenging position. We haven't said much about him tonight.
Gary St. Amant, Brandon Sperling, Brad Loney, of course, very much in the heat of things as he has been all night long. There's Seneker and Raines. And this would be a good race. These 2 guys, no shortage of talent among those 2, and certainly not of experience on the part of Bob Seneker.
And Raines really putting the pressure on Bob. And it has seemed like most of this season that Bob Seneker on restarts after getting fresh tires or after a period of yellow is not particularly strong for a few laps, but then he really begins to come on. He normally sets his car up for the long green flag runs. Meanwhile, Brad Loney has taken 2nd position away from rookie driver Brandon Sperling. And now we'll try to catch Gary St. Amant, who stretched it out to about a 10 or 12 car length advantage heading into turn 3.
St. Amant picking up his points for leading a lap here. Midway through, we had 4 different leaders, 7 lead changes among those same 4 drivers. We have 23 cars still on the lead lap, 9 caution flags, an unusually high number, Rob, and 50 some odd laps there under caution is also a pretty high number. About a third of the race so far has been under caution.
Especially for a racetrack that's relatively flat. I don't remember last year having this many cautions this early in the race.
Any thoughts on why? I mean, earlier we talked about the changing conditions from qualifying and practice yesterday when it was a lot warmer, and then tonight it's very cool, of course, under the lights here. Gave some guys problems early, and that where a lot of the cautions were very early as well.
Well, again, I think another factor is the situation with the flat corners, 5 and 7 degree bankings in turns 1 and 2, the same in 3 and 4. It just makes it extremely difficult to pass, and you'll see a guy run behind somebody, may actually be 2 or 3 tenths quicker, but not enough to make the pass, and it can create frustration for the car trying to overtake the one in front.
This is the race for third. Brandon Sperling, Bob Seneker, and Tony Raines, because up front now, Brad Loney has set sail after Gary St. Amant, who's currently leading.
And he's closed in rather rapidly. I'm surprised that Brandon Sperling has been so successful in being able to hold off Bob Seneker and Tony Raines. And there you can see the gap that the front pair have opened up over the third place car number 51.
And we got another little bump down here in turn number 1. There is the end of it, and we'll perhaps get another look at it in a moment. In any case, the caution flag is waved once again. It's the 56 machine out there on the racetrack this time, and that's
car number 54, Steve Shive,
Shive,
Chris Cole Budweiser Chevrolet, that's sitting nose headed the wrong direction toward turn 1 instead of away from it, as he came together with Dr. Yale Conley, I believe, as the right front fender is gone on the Simonson Windows car number 3.
Been getting letters from across the country. And a moment ago we were talking about racing electronics. Our winner, Ed Callis from Indianapolis, Indiana. Congratulations, Ed. We hope that you're listening in and will be for the rest of the season. There's a piece of fender hanging up over the hood of Dr. Yale Conley's car, the Simonson Windows entry. There's the rest of it. We'll take a break from the action right now. I'll give you a chance to look at some important messages, and we'll focus in on Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the Hawkeye Downs 300, precipitated by, well, a not so serious incident, unless you're looking at it from the point of view of the drivers involved. Here's a look at it.
He's headed down into turn number 1. There's Steve Shive getting out of shape, and I think he and Dr. Conley might have already touched fenders before then. And watch Harold Fair. I think that's Harold making a quick move to the left and just barely missing the nose of Steve Shive's car number 54.
Full left rudder captain as he approached the back end there. There's Dr. Yale Conley's car, minus a little bit of the decorative bodywork over the right front side, and Glenn Allen Jr.'s car. Look at it. Of course, Glenn quite a number of laps down at this point after an early problem. The runner-up in the points battle so far this season. Back to green flag racing. We were just making a comment about how interesting it is up front. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that, Rob?
Yeah, Gary St. Amant elected to do what Mike Eddy and Scott Hansen and several others had done on the previous caution. That is come in for left side tires, and that allows Brad Loney to once again inherit the lead. Bob Seneker runs in second. Third is Tony Raines. Local favorite Johnny Spaw is in fourth position in that 02 Tony's Pizza machine owned by Randy Larson. Fifth is now Jeff Neal. Sixth is Mike Miller. Seventh is J.D. Summers. Eighth is Dennis Lampman. Despite having that broken sway bar, Dave Sensiba runs ninth, and Bill Baird runs in the 10th position in car number 26. So some interesting faces among the top 10.
Well, the thing to watch now, of course, is the move up through the field by those drivers who stopped earlier, notably Mike Eddy, of course, and most recently Gary St. Amant. So we'll be taking a look at them trying to come through. But 2 of the top four drivers are from right here in Cedar Rapids, and that, of course, has the fans in this part of the world anyway very happy indeed.
You can see there's a good battle right there for fourth position. It's presently held by Johnny Spaw in that 02 machine, but probably not for long, as he's fallen well behind Brad Loney, Bob Seneker, and Tony Raines. And Jeff Neal, Mike Miller, and a whole host of cars have moved right in behind him.
Well, Johnny Spaw with a lot of talent and knowledge of this racetrack, but as you say, he lost ground pretty quickly. That indicates his car is not very fast. And Jeff Neal, who needs a turn of good luck, is going to run point there on a whole single file line of cars trying to get around one of the local favorites chance. Now Neal gets inside, Spa up high, and once Neal gets the opening, boy, he just jammed on the gas and shot through there. That was a very nice move. Jeff Neal waiting for just the right opportunity. Mike Miller having a little bit of a harder time, but once Johnny Spa gets out there on that outside line, he just gets passed by a whole heap of cars. Most recently now, here comes Lampman. Sensiba's down inside too. So Johnny Spa, just like that, goes from 3rd back to about 8th, 9th place.
He would love to get a full-time ASA ride for next season. He's the defending track champion here. In fact, won a 50-lap race last night. And at one time earlier this year had a bounty on his head. Anybody that could beat him got a bigger check. And now he's going to the back rather quickly. I'm not sure he's even made one pit stop yet tonight.
Bill Baird getting through also, and now right behind Baird, who had been running 10th, is Mike Eddy. So Mike Eddy's already made his charge toward the front. We see Scott Hansen coming up right behind Mike Eddy. So the leaders that pitted and have fresh tires left and right are now beginning to make their move through the field.
It's kind of like the pulling guard in the halfback, isn't it? Hansen just letting Mike Eddy open the holes, and he follows that lead blocker through.
Bill Baird now trying to hold on to 9th place. Mike Eddy in 10th and Seneca 11th unofficially. Now you're seeing a full field rundown here just after 162. About 10 laps ago. So a few things have changed from this rundown. We hope to see you see your favorite driver and get a good idea just where he or she might be running in this race.
Bill Baird in car number 26, that Saturn Machine Chevrolet, has had some really strong runs this year, Brian. A lot of people, I think, have been surprised at just how competitive he has been at several racetracks.
Well, we've made that comment a couple of times this year, and I'd have to say that Bill Baird is certainly a guy that's put it all together for himself this year. Last year he was struggling mightily and racing primarily in the back of the field, but he has been a contender and even a race leader so far this season, and Bill Baird definitely on the rise in the American Speed Association, getting his knowledge of these racetracks, and a very intelligent man that has been very successful in the business world, is now becoming a very successful race car driver in the American Speed Association. He gets a little bump from Mike Eddy, but gathers it back. And Bill Baird, there's a man, there's experience showing itself in a very, very useful way.
What a tremendous job of hanging on to that car by Bill Baird, not panicking. And Mike Eddy, unfortunately, has lost a spot as Scott Hansen very alertly went to the high side and went around both Eddy and Baird.
Well,
you don't see that very often, do you?
Scott Hansen, he ain't no dummy either. I don't think Mrs. Hansen raised any dumb kids and put them in race cars.
It's the guard had opened the hole, and now he's running for the end zone. Forget that guard.
That's right. Hansen heading for the front in a big way. Got around Mike Eddy a whole lot easier than he might have otherwise. Now Mike Eddy still trying to get around Bill Baird, going 3 wide there. Can't make the move. There's Chris Horn, number 74, still caught in the revolving door down there, nursing a very sick race car around the track, just trying to finish.
Let's take another peek at what happened just a couple of laps ago. Mike Eddy trying to get around Bill Baird, gets him out of shape. Watch Baird gathered up, and look at the move by Scott Hansen to the high side of the racetrack. Not so for Mike Eddy. And I'm not sure car number 88 is handling all that well. It should not have taken Mike, I don't think, that long to get around Bill if, in fact, that car is handling as he would hope that it would be.
Well, we'd also mentioned a couple of times Bill Baird has very recently purchased an Army surplus MiG fighter plane. So maybe something he's learning at the controls of that MiG is standing him in good stead here on the racetrack. That was a pretty quick little recovery there.
Bobby Gill has been on pit road under green, and he was formerly on the lead lap, not so any longer. Back up front, it is Brad Loney stretching his advantage now over Bob Seneca. We watched the set 2 between Eddy and Baird, and as a result, Brad Loney's been able to pull out to about a 12 or 14 car length advantage over Bob Seneca, who has a like margin over third running Tony Raines.
Loney showing his knowledge of this racetrack and apparently knows a little something about this place and how it runs, and especially under these kind of conditions, has really opened a big lead. Tony Raines running in 3rd spot right now, has been a contender all season long, but tonight he's looking very good. How about it, Ralph?
Well, Howie Leto is the crew chief. Howie, last year at this race, you pitted late in the event, changed rear tires, and got Steve Holzhausen to victory lane. Are you planning on doing the same thing for your driver here tonight, Tony Raines?
I don't think so. The circumstances were a little different on the day of race. It was hot and sunny, and tires were greased up. Tonight the car's a little bit tight, and I think we're just going to cause us to go with a little different game plan.
Little different strategy here tonight, gentlemen, and Johnny Spa has pitted, Rob, so he has 1 stop under his belt.
Thanks, Ralph. Well, Mike Eddy has caught and now passed Scott Hansen Hansen as he's closing in on Dave Sensa. But we're watching the third place car number 87 of Tony Raines. It's been a pretty uneventful evening for him thus far, but he's now a full straightaway back of leader Brad Loney.
Running essentially by himself on the racetrack there is both Glenn Allen Jr. and the number 74 car of Chris Horn down laps of the race. Dave Sensima's car around on the inside and not handling very well either. He gets passed very quickly there by Dennis Lampman.
Well, actually, Brian, he was putting a move on Dennis Lampman to pick up a spot. I happened to be watching on the racetrack before we picked it up on monitor. He was getting ready to go around. Lampman got into him going into turn number 1, and that's what got him out of shape and allowed Eddie and Scott Hansen to pick up a spot over Sensible.
Dennis Lampman having a lot more success lately in the season than he had earlier on. Of course, a top 10 finish at Brainerd last week. Mike Eddy had big problems at Brainerd last week, nursing a very sick race car around the track. Probably didn't even break the national speed limit. Well, the soon-to-be defunct national speed limit as he was circling Brainerd racetrack later on that afternoon.
Dennis Lampman currently 16th in ASA season points, finished 19th the year before, and of course in 1993 won his first and only ASA victory in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Scott Hansen now picking on the gentle giant a little bit as those two go side by side around the racetrack. Hansen a little bit of an edge now, begins to move inside. Clearly his car handling very well. That was the intention, of course, when he came in to change the right side tires along with Mike Eddy and Joe Knott. And now Hansen and Eddy both moving towards the front. We've kind of lost track of Joe Knott. Where's he in this whole situation?
Well, he's about, you got me. In fact, I don't even see car number 48 out on the racetrack at the moment.
Oh, there he is.
There he is, mired in a big pack of race cars. He's now not too far behind Bill Baird that Mike Eddy and Scott Hansen had to deal with just a few laps ago.
So Eddy and Hansen working their strategy a little bit better than Joe Knott, at least, or implementing it, we should say. There's the leader, Brad Loney. He has led more laps than anybody in this race, and he knows how to lead them here at Hawkeye. Well, the fans have a moment to kind of settle down a little bit here as the AC-Delco Challenge Series stop number 7 for the 1995 season visits Cedar Rapids, Iowa for the second time in the nearly 30-year history of the American Speed Association. We're back here at Cedar Rapids on America's birthday, July 4th weekend. Let's take a look just a few moments ago at another replay here involving J.D. Summers' car, the 22.
And Scott Hansen was trying to make a pass coming off turn number 2, gets alongside, a little tap, and let's see if he is able to make the pass. Yeah, not quite. He gives Summers an opportunity to get his machine righted, and now suddenly leader Brad Loney has a lot of traffic that he must contend with, and this is going to be an important time of this race for Brad Loney, as several drivers could have maybe a good chance of closing in on him. Bob Seneker continues in second position, but he's a full straightaway back now.
I have to ask, we've seen so many good recoveries by the drivers here after incidents like that, bumps, inadvertent nudges here and there. It has to be because the cool conditions are making these Goodyear tires work extremely well. They have a lot more control over the race car, it would seem, because we haven't really seen incidents that might have been more serious under different conditions have been pretty uneventful.
Well, and for whatever reason, this racing surface is not particularly hard on tires, which is good. And Goodyear did bring a rather stiff compound here to Cedar Rapids. Brad Loney working his way through traffic, you can see there. He had really stretched his lead out. I watched the margin between himself and 7th place Mike Eddy, and it was growing before Loney got into this traffic.
Do not adjust your sets, folks. That was a shot from what we call our fan cam. That's the same place the fans are sitting in the stands looking through the protection fence there, of course, at the race. They came by the start-finish line.
Several drivers,
a lot of traffic.
Several drivers that have been in contention are in real jeopardy of going a lap down. Right in front of Brad Loney are car number 44, Pat Bordeaux, who was leading this race, Matt Kinza, and then Gary St. Amant, all about to go a lap down, along with Steve Holtzhausen and Joe Knott. They've got to be hoping for a caution, and a caution quickly.
Cindy Peterson down on the inside, also going another lap down to the leader, Brad Loney, just buried in among a bunch of cars. Dr. Gail Conley in and back out of the pits once again. We may see him appear briefly in the screen as the leaders go by, but there's Brad Loney leading this race and trying to put a lap now on Tom Jones.
It's 4th and 5th positions. Jeff Neal's been in 4th for quite some time. Mike Eddy is 5th, now tucks the nose of the GM Goodwrench Pontiac alongside the Chevrolet Lumina of Neal and picks up the spot rather handily.
Another nice surgical pass there by Mike Eddy, the master. And Jeff Neal now watching the number 88 car set sail. Of course, once again, Mike Eddy has come in and changed all 4 tires, so the gamble apparently is paying off in a very big way because he has made his way through the field very quickly. Only a handful of race cars remain ahead of Mike Eddy, and of course this being the first one.
Those 2 drivers a half lap behind leader Brad Loney, but they'll now begin to close in as Tony Raines has caught Bob Seneca, will challenge him for 2nd position, a full straightaway back.
Brad Loney has worked his knowledge of this track, and apparently, at least so far, his pit strategy to good advantage. He pitted at the end of pit road at the very entrance to the racetrack, and he was able to get out quickly and maintain his positions even after a stop, most of them, and then work his way quickly back to the front. Now here, this battle for 2nd and 3rd is a long way behind Brad Loney, and however it turns out, whoever ends up prevailing in the 2nd place battle has got a long way to go to catch the leader.
They are narrowing the gap between themselves and Loney, but they've been running pretty much by themselves on the racetrack, not having to contend with traffic. Things have strung out somewhat as Brad has had to run in on cars running side by side. He's having a lot of difficulty getting around the 0 of Tom Jones, who's the last car on the lead lap.
Bob Seneca and Tony Raines, 2nd and 3rd place, and back up front to the leader, Brad Loney. About a half lap ahead of the rest. That's the way it's going. The local favorite trying to write a storybook ending after sitting on the pole here at Hawkeye. Up in turn number 1 here at Hawkeye Downs, the number 32 machine, and that is the Super America Red Dog Beer Chevrolet of Ted Smokestad, has found its way to the wall. Here's a look at what happened.
You can see it happened coming into turn number 1. It involved Smokestad and Tom Jones, and there's Jones getting up into the left front, and Smokestad gets a hard right into the wall in turn number 1. You can see Jones's car spinning and just makes gentle contact with the turn 2 wall. And Ralph, Ted Smokestad cannot be happy here again tonight.
No, he's a little frustrated. Ted, how'd you end up in the wall?
I was going outside the 0 car, and he just kind of turned to the right before he turned left, and sent me into the fence. A little disappointing. We were doing pretty decent with the Super America Red Dog Chevy this weekend, just really trying to climb our way back up into this rookie battle, and it's unfortunate. The guy that runs our rookie meetings kind of did a rookie mistake, and I was the end of it. So we'll be back at Topeka in a few weeks, so brand new, ready to rock and roll. We'll see what happens then.
Should make that next rookie meeting kind of interesting.
Rob, I'd love to get, and Ralph, I'd love to get another look at the very beginning of that, because it looked like there was a car down on the inside that might have had an effect on what happened to Tom Jones, and it's very unlike Tom to make what Ted mentioned, called a rookie mistake. You know, I think we need another look at that a little bit further back.
Yeah, you can understand Smokestad's frustration, but I don't think he saw what Tom Jones had to look at. You can see here they are coming down into turn number 1. Now watch the white lines there. And quite honestly, it looked to me like Jones pretty well maintained his line. That's one of those situations it's hard to place blame, but I really didn't see much that Tom Jones did too wrong right there.
Hard to say. I had seen, you know, what I thought was another car down inside, but it was not. In fact, the incident clearly involved only Tom Jones and then Ted Smokestad, and I don't know. That's a tough call there.
Yeah, it really is. And different drivers will enter turn number 1 with a different line, and that may have been what was going on right there. Jones may have set up higher than did Smokestad, and Ted thinking that Jones would point the car down earlier into turn number 1, and they just made contact.
Well, in any case, the number 32 car coming in over the hook. Here's a look at the races coming up. And keep in mind, the July 8 event scheduled for Salem, Indiana, the second race on our schedule, canceled this year for no reason other than the racetrack itself is simply not open. So a race that had been on the schedule and that we were looking forward to in Salem, Indiana, do not go to Salem on July 8 looking for a race for the American Speed Association. Won't be there. Instead, Topeka, Kansas at the end of the month is where you'll need to be, or in Milwaukee at the end of August. The schedule thinning out a little bit here as we have had a very intense schedule for the last 7 or 8 weeks. A little bit of grilling on the barbecue here on a holiday weekend in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The 4th of July weekend just getting started in a very nice way. A terrific race going on, and the local favorites leading.
She said you got to have dirt on your dog. And I don't think that's quite what she had in mind, and she brought us an example, and that's about the nastiest looking hot dog I've ever seen.
I'll tell you what, that's probably got some flavor to it though. And here's a look at doggy cam. Doggy cam. This is following Ralph. Here, boy. Come on. Go get him, Ralph. Sick him. Sick him. Duck behind that tire rack. There you go, Ralph. You made your getaway. Ted Smokestad's car making its getaway the way you don't ever want to see a race car coming down behind the wall. 2 wreckers to pick that one up. I mean, nothing's working on it.
Oh man, that is severely damaged.
Welcome TNN on the wrecker, on the side of the wrecker there. We're glad to be here. Hope you're enjoying it there at home. The only thing that could be any better than watching a broadcast of American Speed Association on TNN would be to come on out to the racetrack yourself. When you do, be sure to say hi to us. We'd love to see you. We'll take another break here while we're still under caution. Ted Smokestad's car being removed from the racetrack, and the Brad Loney crew looking forward to what they hope will be a victory. Second on the racetrack, Todd Forbes, although he's a few laps down. Here's the battle for second place with Bob Seneker and Tony Raines. Scott Hansen with a front row seat once again, watching these two and maybe trying to make the same thing happen that happened before. A couple of cars got out of shape in front of Scott, and he went right on through.
And a number of lead lap cars came in again under this most recent caution, including Mike Eddy. And I think he's been on pit road 3 times since leader Brad Loney was last in. And look at Loney legging it out over these guys. It's a great battle for second, but it looks like Tony Raines and Scott Hansen both, for the time being, have a faster car than does Bob Seneker. And they're not going to wait too long, I don't think, before they scoot that blue car number 84 out of the way. Raines gets alongside, and I think he's finally going to wrestle second position away, although we've seen car after car get alongside and not be able to clear the pass.
Tony Raines doing a good job, and yes, he does get clear. And now Hansen dives through underneath. The opportunistic Scott Hansen, of course, the winner a week ago in Brainerd. A thought about Brad Loney, what a difference a week makes, because he just fought an awful race car by his own admission. He just said, I don't have half the car here this year that I did last year at Brainerd. And a week later, he comes to his home track, and you can't touch it.
And you know, I don't think we mentioned him all day at Brainerd, and yet he still managed a 13th place finish. So I think that's a pretty decent salvage out of a lousy race car on a particular day.
Well, he just pedaled it around out there. Brad Loney's crew chief down there is with Ralph Shaheen. Ralph, let's get to the bottom of some of this.
That would be Kurt Beckler as crew chief. Kurt, we're seeing a lot of the other top teams bidding again and taking on more fresh tires. You're still with the same ones you've had. Are you concerned about your tire wear?
Well, Winnebago Chevrolet seems to be running good along the greens. And according to our watch, we're in pretty good shape. With our one pit stop, we're going to gamble and go the rest of the way, barring a flat tire.
Now we'll just have to see if that strategy pays off.
Well, the eyes tell the story. I'm not sure if he was as convinced of his own words as he was trying to make us feel about it.
Well,
you know, it is a gamble.
And I think that's probably the first time he's been interviewed as a crew chief. So a little pressure on this bunch of diaper dandies. Average age, what, now 23, 24, and another one on the way. So, you know, his wife is with child.
Well, you know, and our know-it-all brothers, of course, came up with a statistic about exactly that, not without help from the Brad Loney crew. But, yes, with a child on the way, they said that at a particular moment when the pregnant mother-to-be was in the pit, that the average age at the moment that baby would be born would actually take a serious dip if she was right there. So,
Yes, so.
About 25 or 6 years old, young crew doing a great job.
Todd Forbes has been on leader's pace when he's been on the racetrack, but he's had that fuel pickup problem, perhaps definitely had a tire problem, shown at 25th position as he and Brad Loney go around the number 36 of Cindy Peterson.
And another look there at Chris Horn, who has just been driving his own line around the bottom of the racetrack. He's got to be down on power and running very slowly here and just circling the track trying to finish.
Saw Brandon Sperling and Tony Raines go by on the high side. Now Bob Seneker does the same. Here comes Dave Sensivan. What an interesting story that has been for that Lane Automotive Chevy Monte Carlo that you saw the right front corner literally sitting down on the racetrack with a broken right front sway bar. They've done something right as Sensivan remains on the lead lap and in the top 10.
Well, if they haven't fixed that sway bar, then they just need to go ahead and break it before the race, before every race they start, because the car sure has been handling well if they have indeed not fixed that sway bar. Sensivan's car just circling nicely out there.
A big gap back to car number 65 with a very dark back end, so he's losing perhaps a little bit of oil. That's Kevin Sawinski, shown in 6th place and on the lead lap. What a great run for this driver. He hasn't been in competition much with ASA of late, preferring the Arco series for the most part. And there is Joe Knott getting some real heat from Mike Eddy. Joe Knott is what, I think, at 7th position, and that Raby Ford Al-Anon Honda Thunderbird, Honda dealership for Thunderbird. You know what I mean.
And Mike Eddy, of course, no one capable of turning up the heat like the driver of the 88 Goodwrench car, being shown at 8th place, the car number 88. Well, let's make that 7th place or a race for it. Nope, Joe Knott holds him off.
You know, Joe qualified second at Grand Rapids earlier this season and then crashed on his second qualifying lap, started alongside Mike Eddy. And we thought he had, after Mike, it looked like Mike got into him a little bit, spun him out early in the race, and Joe said, no, that wasn't the case at all. He just lost it, I think.
Whoa!
And Knott gets into the back of Kevin Sawinski's car number 65, and we've got several cars together. Jeff Neal, J.D. Summers. Neal, I don't think made any contact, just spun, and continued losing only a single position.
That was close because Jeff Neal, again, I think just like Rick Miller earlier, didn't quite see the full, just didn't see the situation developing. And Kevin Sawinski was about to be black flagged for the oil that we see on the back of his car there when he appeared to, maybe he spotted the black flag coming out and he slowed down a little bit. Round he went.
Well, Torch just handed us a note, and I think I agree. It looks like rear end grease on the rear end of car number 65 and not, in fact, engine oil.
Well, we saw a similar pattern developing on the back of Tony Rain's car last week that turned out to be rear end grease caused by a loose cover on the differential. So Kevin Sawinski, about to get a black flag, appeared as though he might have just slowed down pretty quickly, a little too quickly for Joe not to react. Joe tapped him. Around he went. Jeff Neal did not, in fact, make contact. Man, oh man, did he miss.
And continues around the racetrack.
That was great driving by Jeff, and a little bit of luck, I'd have to say, as he just kind of pivoted around the back end of Sawinski's car.
Let's look from basically right down at track height, and you could see that there might have been just the gentlest of contact between Joe Knott and Kevin Sawinski, and everybody else on the binders hard behind. Pretty soon you're going to see Jeff Neal sliding through the frame backward.
And here's the wrecker going out to get the car of Sawinski. There's Jeff Neal. He's back in the right direction. So things have settled down once again. We're about 6. Brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer. We want your business. By Just for Men, the leader in men's hair coloring. Blends away gray in 5 minutes. And by Pep Boys Automotive Supercenters. Go Brad and hi Dad. I like those two signs the young fellows were holding up there in the crowd. Roger Slack, the young flagman for the American Speed Association, threatening the green flag. Scott Hansen going into the pits there to take right side tires. Well, we've seen some guys pitting a whole lot and some guys pitting not so much.
You know, coming in by himself, I don't think that was a planned pit stop. I think he might have had a tire going down. He was in 3rd position, just a couple of cars now behind Brad Loney, and he'll hustle so as not to lose a lap. But he'll be at the tail end of the field as we come to green. Hansen's going to really have to hurry as he's behind Chris Horn coming off pit road, and he will make it to turn number 1 about the time Brad Loney picks up the pace off turn 4. And Scott Hansen's got a long way to go as the championship points are really going to shake up once again, Brian.
Well, we go green flag racing with 59 laps remaining. A little bit of debris on the track in the backstretch. And there's, it's well off the racing line, but it brings out the caution once again. So somebody's dropped off a part of the fiberglass bodywork from a race car there, and that brings out yet another caution flag. It'll be a brief one, I'm sure, because they'll be able to hustle right out there and pick up whatever it is that's lying on the track.
What a great break for Scott Hansen, as he was about 2/3 of a lap behind the leader as he came up to speed in turn number 1, though we did see him wiggling the car back and forth last time past the start-finish line. And the way he's hustling around on the bottom side, I think he's coming back in car number 53. And Ralph, Johnny on the spot, he's there. Ralph, what's the problem?
Well, it was a flat right front the first time. Now he's circulating along the bottom side of the racetrack. They're probably going to bring him back in. Looks like they're going to do left side tires. Apparently he might have hit some of the debris that was out on the racetrack. So Hansen's going to have to come back, and this is really going to knock him back.
Yeah, Glenn Allen was 2nd in points. Hansen was 3rd. Allen's problems continue as under this most recent caution, Brian, he got an assist back to the pits, the car not under power. And now Hansen will find himself at the tail end of the lead lap. I think we still have 19 or 20 cars on the lead lap. Ralph, take it away.
Well, they're going to work on the left side tires. Danny Stillman, the crew chief, giving the orders. They get the left sides on. Hansen sits patiently inside the car waiting. Jack goes down. The Wisconsin Aviation Incorporated Thunderbird goes back out.
will certainly make the rest of this race very interesting. I wondered there, you know, with my typical sort of sense of humor, wondering if maybe Scott had that piece of fender in the car there with him and heaved it out on the racetrack because he needed a caution at this point. Of course, that's ludicrous, but in any case, he's come in and changed now fresh rights and left side tires. You would have to expect that if anybody comes through the field like a balloon with the air coming out, it's going to be Scott Hansen for a while now. He'll be wiggling his way through there big time, and he's got 55 laps to the end of the race. I don't know, he could make it very interesting. The ASA on TNN. Tune in Sunday, July 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central here in Iowa, when the AC-Delco Challenge Series presents the Mellow Yellow 300 from Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas. We enjoyed our visit there last year, and we will once again bring you live coverage of this exciting ASA race Sunday, July 30th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the Mellow Yellow 300.
Darrell Waltrip, Mark Martin, and maybe some other Winston Cup drivers should be there for that one, so make sure that you don't miss that one. Back to green once again with 54 laps remaining. Brad Loney will now try to fend off the charge of Tony Raines, Bob Seneca, and Dave Sensova. Behind them it's Joe Knott, Mike Eddy, and Gary St. Amant and Brian Refner.
Well, they got a great jump on the restart again, and Todd Forbes' car providing a little bit of a cushion between first place Brad Loney and in second place, but third on the racetrack, Tony Raines. Raines now gets inside very quickly and cleanly on Forbes there. That's exactly what he had to do to stay close to Loney, who has shown consistently the ability to be able to set sail on these green flag runs.
He needed to do that. There's a good battle for third position now between Bob Seneca and Dave Sensova. Behind them it's Joe Knott and Mike Eddy.
Look at everybody in the field at 242 laps into the race. We're just a handful, maybe half dozen more than that as we approach 250 at this point, but things are pretty much as they were as you look down through the full field rundown here. A lot of really good racing going on back in the pack there. The pack is quite thick indeed behind Brad Loney.
Mike Eddy has gotten around Joe Knott, now picking up 5th position on the racetrack. To hustle because Eddy is on the charge now, just about a straightaway behind leader Brad Loney. For the time being, though, Loney has clear sailing, although Tony Raines and Todd Forbes are able to keep pace. Bob Seneca is fading just a bit, and Dave Sensova is having his hands full with Mike Eddy in a battle for 4th position as Eddy works the high side of the racetrack.
Sensova maintaining his inside position, but Mike Eddy now, as soon as he got the drive off the turn, run around pretty quickly. And this is going to be a real nail biter for the fans and for the crew, and maybe even the driver of the number 33 car out there. Loney with 50 laps to try to hold him off. Let's go once again to Ralph Shaheen. Ralph?
Glenn Allen Jr. is out of it for tonight. Lots of problems for you tonight. What finally put you out?
We ended up breaking a distributor to start off, and then something else happened. It did the same thing. We had an internal problem with the motor. First time we ran the motor, but the car was awful good. Early we got into 4th position. A little better than the cars in front of us, but we were riding, taking our time. We seen Mike knows he's a point leader. We're a few behind. We wanted to stay with him, but this wasn't our day. The CarQuest Auto Parts, Eaglewood Construction, Pontiac ran awful well for us. This wasn't our day.
Kevin Sawinski's car is parked just besides Glenn's. His rear end plug came out, and that's what ended his day, the 65.
And parked up in turn 4 now is just like that. The 87 car, Tony Raines, who had been contending in this race, he's out of it. This car has just come to a complete stop. Let's take a look at what went on with Tony.
Tony, of course, was in 2nd position. There he is going into down the back stretch into turn number 3, and he was closing on Loney. Suddenly slides up out of the groove and almost but not quite contacts the wall, and there's something seriously wrong. We can see Tony has taken the gloves and the helmet off inside the race car, so it's something significantly more serious than perhaps just a flat tire.
Saw a puff of smoke there. It could be the engine just locked up or stopped or something, transmission locked or something. Anyway, he just went skidding up there, didn't hit the wall, but clearly the night is over for Tony Raines in the 87 car. A great run over the last handful of races for this car and driver, and certainly a big turnaround from last season when this was more the norm. Tony Raines out of it here. It's a tough break for him.
There's that telltale black streak of oil from behind car number 87. You can see it. And it was amazing how quickly he was able to get that car stopped without sliding in his own oil, as it was only maybe 100 feet at most from the point at which he moved up out of the racing groove where he came to rest in turn 4.
We would describe that as a pan failure without any further information.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll take another pause from the action here as yet another caution flag is flying over Hawkeye Downs Speedway. Tony Raines, the latest victim of this race, and the leader is still Brad
Rod or something, you know. I don't know, the clean burn, you know, Apco Pontiac, we were running real good. Brad's really fast. We were catching him a little bit. We might have had something for him, I don't know, but we'll never find out now. So we'll just get her back together and come at it next week.
Some of these guys are on real fresh tires. Brad's on some pretty old tires. How big of a difference is that?
Hirschfield, the first in the Anspaugh, normally car driven by Dave Anspaugh. He and Skillman got together. Rick Miller tagged them as they were up against the wall in the backstretch. Smokestad, we saw him go into the wall. Beebe out of the race, although we know nothing more at this point about what happened to Rick Beebe. We did see him slow, and he was out. Glenn Allen Jr. lost a bunch of laps early, came out, gave it a valiant effort once again, but now Tony Raines and Brandon Sperling all behind the wall tonight.
Sperling just pulled behind the wall. 16 cars still on the lead lap. Brad Loney, Bob Seneker, Mike Eddy, Dave Sensiva, and Joe Knott, the top 5. 6th is Steve Holzhausen, the race winner here a year ago. Then Gary St. Amant, 7th. Brian Refner, 8th. Jeff Neal, 9th. And J.D. Summers is 10th. 11th is Mike Miller. 12th is Dennis Lampman. 13th, Pat Bordeaux. 14th is Scott Hansen. 15th is Bill Baird, and local favorite Johnny Spa runs 16th. Those drivers still on the lead lap. What do you think, Brian? What's your prediction at this point? You saw Mike Eddy on the charge just before the caution came out. Does this work to his advantage or disadvantage to once again give Brad Loney clear track in front? Remember, he's got at least 4 fresh tires, maybe 6 since Loney was last on pit road.
Well, I think that if the track crew takes its time getting the oil fixed up before we go back to green, that Brad Loney's chances of winning this race only get better and better and better with every passing lap under caution. Here's Dave Sensiva, who has done such a great job after breaking the sway bar. He started all 7 races, the rookie winner from last year.
Currently 12th in points. His best finish this year was an 8th at Jennerstown. He had a pair of 9th places at Brainerd last week, at Toledo in the 2nd race of the season. Only 5 top 10 finishes, and of course he ended 1994 so strongly after watching fellow rookie challenger Brian Refner qualify for the pole in the last race of the season. It was Sensiva who ended up having the best day, finishing 2nd and clinching the rookie battle in the process.
We ask, we get. We asked about Rick Beebe, we get a report from Ralph Shaheen.
Broken rocker arm, Brian. That's what it was. He put him out behind the wall.
Well, not much depth to that report. By the way, what did you mean pan failure for Tony Raines?
That's what, you know, somebody said when something goes wrong in the engine and the oil starts leaking out from the bottom, you know, obviously it could be any number of things that actually cause it, that the humorous description and the generic term is a pan failure. The oil pan failed to hold the oil in the engine.
Well, I know you've talked about the Kniffling pin problem and the muffler bearing problem. I thought pan problem was the same kind of thing.
Pan failure. While we ponder the lexicon of racing terms, some new, some old, here at Hawkeye Downs, and anticipate the final 35. We're back racing under the green flag, and Brad Loney has got his pen out trying to write that storybook ending. A fairy tale it would be after earning the pole position here on his home racetrack and leading most of the laps during the course of the race. But there is some terrific racing going on behind him. Mike Eddy has made a pass on Bob Seneker and has taken over 2nd place. And that is not a good thing when you're Brad Loney trying to lead this race. Mike Eddy on fresh tires is coming. Let's take a look at the pass, the aforementioned pass by Mike Eddy.
Well, you can see Mike Eddy is trying to go to work on Bob Seneker, as it looks like we're going to have a caution once again for Bill Baird, who spun up in turn number 2. And this is the pass that we're looking at for 2nd position, and Bob Seneker doesn't give it up easily. Look at Mike Eddy wrestling the steering wheel in car number 88. These guys have bumped and rubbed year after year, sometimes Eddy getting the advantage, often Seneker getting the advantage. Tonight it was Mike Eddy taking over 2nd position as the caution waves yet again, Brian, with 30 laps to go. And Brad Loney, I think, is going to need a miracle to be able to fend off Mike tonight.
Well, the only thing working for him is that Todd Forbes is in between. Now, if Mike Eddy makes quick work of Todd Forbes and gets around to the back bumper of Brad Loney, we will have quite a race. But with Mike Eddy's car going towards Brad as quickly as it did prior to this caution, we'd have to say that Mike's got the better car out there tonight.
And lead lap automobile Mike Miller is coming in. Car number 18 apparently will make a last pit stop definitely unscheduled at this point. The other driver that was making a strong move just prior to the caution, you saw Steve Holzhausen picking up a spot, making his way past Dave Sensiba in car number 4, and it is now Holzhausen, the 1994 race winner here, moving up to 4th. It's been several weeks since we've seen Steve Holzhausen as they're running a limited schedule this season.
It looked like a splash of gas for the number 18 car. The crew went out there pretty casually, and of course the only guy moving fast was the gas man and the guy with the catch can, and Mike Miller's right back out on the racetrack, so apparently it was fuel for the 18 car.
And they must have had good reason to think he could not make it to the end, otherwise they'd have stayed out. Now Brad Loney might have the same problem, and Mike Eddy gets a great jump on the restart and dispatches with Todd Forbes in a heartbeat.
15 cautions for a total of 96 laps so far. We're not sure if that's an ASA record, but I'll tell you what, there have been a lot of laps under yellow. Now we're going green, and of course we will have 5 laps of green flag racing at the end, no matter what. Now Brad Loney trying to hold off Mike Eddy after making short work of Todd Forbes, as you said, Rob. And here is, and another caution coming out. That brings the crowd to its feet as Pat Bordeaux, one of the cars involved, and it looked like, well, it might have been another car, didn't catch the second
Tom
one.
Jones in the Felpro Pace Jacks Pontiac. Bordeaux, who's been on the lead lap all night, in fact led a few laps in his BASF Finish Master Chevrolet, is now sitting idle down in turn number 4, trying to get that machine restarted.
And there is Tom Jones from Highland Park, Illinois, in the Felpro Pace Jacks Pontiac Grand Prix. The other car involved. Go to commercial one more time, try to get some of these messages out of the way, and when we come back with the final 20 laps or so of this race, we hope to take it all the way to the end for you. Brad Loney still leads the start-finish line. Mike Eddy trying to get inside quickly and get the job done early, and Loney holds him off, at least at the stripe, but Eddy's got that inside line now.
Well, I think the higher groove may be a little slipperier than it was earlier. This is the part of the racetrack coming up where Tony Raines lost a motor. Loney edges again ahead by about a half a car length, but here comes Eddy back on the low side into the side of car number 33. They bump coming off turn 4, and Loney hangs on to the lead.
Well, Loney came out of that one better. This young driver not short on courage. At 22 laps to go, Mike Eddy forcing the issue. Todd Forbes, who had been in between them now, is running 3rd on the racetrack, but he is down. Oh, boy, Mike Eddy got a drive through that time. Loney got out of the gas big, and now Mike Eddy edges back in front here as these two waging a seesaw battle with Todd Forbes in the front row seat.
And Loney completely out of the groove in turn number 1. He'll not be able to hold off Mike this time as Eddy takes over the lead, and Todd Forbes not racing for position. Like a gentleman, I think, gives Loney a little bit of racing room. Now they bump just a little bit, but Mike Eddy now has the thing all to himself. He's just got 20 laps to survive as he begins to stretch it out to 3-4 car lengths over Loney.
Well, here's where the pit stop strategy that we asked Howard Thomas about earlier, he said it was a gamble, and at that point he must have felt like it was a good gamble, and it's paying off. Fresh tires on the 88 car, and tires apparently going away on Brad Loney's machine, which had been very fast here tonight.
3rd and 4th, a pair of Fords. It's Bob Sineker's Lane Automotive Blue Thunderbird in 3rd position, but Steve Holzhausen is right there to challenge in car number 78. We haven't seen much from Steve since he led the opening 8 laps of this race.
Dave Sensiba running behind, just behind Holzhausen there. Holzhausen, the winner of this race a year ago, and the early leader, had troubles but has clawed his way back into contention here, racing in 4th spot.
And behind this 3rd place battle, as you mentioned, it's Sensiba. Behind him is Joe Knott, Brian Refner, and Scott Hansen.
That's the way they line up behind Mike Eddy, as they have many times this season already. Mike Eddy with victories in the first 3 races of the season. Then it's been a drought, although he has visited Victory Circle and been on the podium. His most recent outing in Brainerd was very, very disappointing. He fought a bad race car, only lost 4 laps, and that's what brought him back to the rest of the field in the points battle for the season, and has made the situation very interesting. A victory here tonight and a DNF by Glenn Allen Jr. will, of course, extend Mike Eddy's lead further in the points battle and take him way out in front again.
It's a great race for position between Joe Knott, Brian Refner, the number 53 of Scott Hansen, and it's Gary St. Amant and Jeff Neal.
Brad Loney not letting Mike Eddy get away. Of course, you might figure that Mike Eddy just sort of soft pedaling along up in the front there, a term that we bring from bicycle racing, meaning he's just going fast enough to stay in front of Loney, and if Loney tries to challenge, Mike will pick it up again.
Although Brad has been able to pull away from Todd Forbes. This is still the best racing as Loney tries to narrow that gap between himself and Mike Eddy. But between Joe Knott and Brian Refner, who's trying the high line, and down on the bottom is Scott Hansen.
Hansen again. Now, he came into the pits so many times, changed a whole bunch of tires there, and made a double stop, really, to change tires under caution, and or 2 successive cautions. Late in the race, we thought it was a mistake. We thought maybe it was because something was wrong, but apparently Scott Hansen has used a little bit of Sly Fox pit stop strategy to put himself back into contention this race.
Number 74, Chris Horn, going another lap. And, you know, he's gotten a lot of TV time tonight in car number 74. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Keeps getting passed by the leaders and stays down low, letting him go by. Be interesting to find out just why Chris is going so slowly, and has been for the duration of the race. Perhaps down a cylinder or 2 in the engine. Hansen now pressuring Refner just a little bit. Refner likewise doing the same for Joe Knott. While up front, it's Brad Loney, and now Mike Eddy. These two going at it here. Brad Loney not giving it up easily as we wind down to the final 10 laps in this race.
Time into turn number 1, Brian. He stuck a fender underneath Mike Eddy. Looks like he may try it again. And, you know, he's got to be racing on pure guts at this point in this race. He would love to win his first one in front of the hometown racing fans. He's led much of this race. He's been the dominant factor. And he's doing it on old tires. About a 3-car length deficit to make up. And Joe Knott and Brian Refner continue to go at it down the backstretch.
Refner on the low line. Hansen going high now. It's Knott made good on a pass, and now Hansen trying to do the same. He's followed quite a few people through a hole created for him, apparently, and likewise now he gets around Refner on the high side following Joe Knott. Well, Refner not going to give it up just so quick. There's St. Amant creeping back into the picture as well. He's driven very steadily and stayed hanging around in the top 5 all night.
Just behind Gary, you can see the black, yellow numbered car number 22 of J.D. Summers still solidly in the top 10.
J.D. Summers, a rookie driver that's been very fast. A lot of times a driver that's fast it doesn't have the ability to pace himself through a long race, but Summers has also shown a lot of ability to race a long event like tonight. 300 laps, and J.D. Summers still there. Leading a trio now, actually 5 cars all together and all on the lead lap. They are racing for 3rd. Joe Knott looking for another podium finish here. Scott Hansen, of course, the winner a week ago in Brainerd. And back to the lead now is Mike Eddy, running into a little bit of traffic. Comes up quickly behind Kent Stauffer, makes the move. Loney tries to squeeze through on the inside and just about makes it work. In fact, he has got the edge as Mike Eddy drifts high in the turn. Loney will lead to the stripe, technically taking the lead, and now he clearly goes back in front with only 5 laps to go. Mike Eddy giving him a little nudge. Loney getting out of shape. These two are going to go at it here, and now it's Loney the leader with Mike Eddy having to repass to take it back.
And give Eddy credit. Once he got Loney out of shape, he allowed him to gather it in before again trying to challenge and pressure for the lead coming off turn number 4. 4 laps to go now.
They're banging on each other, and it's Mike Eddy that goes around. Loney is able to keep going, but he comes around. One of them's going to have to get back into it again, but both of them, neither of we should say, of them are going to win this race now. We go to caution, and we will hold the lap count at 5 to go while both drivers manage to gather it back. They took each other out of the race that time, and inheriting the lead, of course, will be the driver running in 3rd spot just a few moments ago. And, well, things turn around quickly here as Joe Knott now becomes the new man on the point.
Could Bob Seneker ever have envisioned that with 4 laps to go, he'd be the man in the catbird seat to win the race this evening? And what an incredible turn of events as Brad Loney battled back after relinquishing the lead to Mike Eddy, and the two made contact. I'm sure we're going to get another look at what happened there. But Bob Seneker now just has to cruise around. We've stopped the lap count, 296 complete, 4 to go. And Bob really has nobody pressuring him. Here we go, off of turn number 4. Eddy gets into the back end of Loney. And again they make contact, and again they make contact.
It looked like Loney was going to gather it up, but Mike Eddy came around and tagged him, and that sent the youngster all the way around. Now, I had said that Joe Knott would be the leader. Of course, he was 3rd, and obviously he got hard on the brakes. Here's another look at it. You'll see contact several times, all in quick succession here.
And you know, as they're bumping and banging, watch them go into turn number 1. Once that first contact is made, now Brad did pinch him down just a little bit, but hey, he's got the line, he's got the lead. And then once he got into him, I think Eddie just simply lost the back end and drifted back up into Loney.
Well, it looked like the back end tried to hook up for just a second there, and that's what sent him all the way around. In any case, neither Brad Loney nor Mike Eddy, who had been racing for the lead moments ago, are going to be the winners of this race, apparently. Bob Seneker inherits the lead. Joe Knott, who had been third, got on the brakes hard, and a couple of guys got around him. So it is Seneker, the Bluebird, number 84, trying to turn his fortunes around from a week ago when he lost a whole lot of laps.
Steve Holtzhausen now in second position in car number 78, but a couple of lap cars separate him from the leader, Bob Seneker. Third is Dave Sensiva. Fourth is Joe Knott. Fifth is Brian Refner. Sixth is Scott Hansen. Seventh is J.D. Summers. Eighth is Gary St. Amant. Brad Loney is now ninth, with Jeff Neal 10th, and Mike Eddy back to 11th. Wow. Unbelievable. This is not the way I would have thought it would finish.
Brad Loney pulling up 3 wide there alongside with J.D. Summer, of course. Loney making sure that he's got his best position on the racetrack for the restart. He's trying to hug down inside. There's Hansen just in front of him. St. Amant on the outside, but from first to ninth, or second to ninth. Well, actually, he was leading, wasn't he? And from first place to ninth place, just in the blink of an eye here at Hawkeye Downs on the home racetrack. No storybook ending tonight for the young man from Cedar Rapids.
And Roger Slack, the official starter, just waved the black flag at somebody in that lead file. And I think it was for Gary St. Amant in car number 7. I'm not sure why. But we had about 4 or 5 cars running very close together on the racetrack. And St. Amant, who had been second in points before Brainerd last week, left there 5th after having some problems on the racetrack. Now, after what looked like a solid top 10 finish, will be, for some reason, brought on pit road for a consultation as we get the 1 to go from Roger Slack.
We may be able to tell what the black flag was all about. It's positioning on the racetrack here. So Gary St. Amant apparently doing something not quite kosher. Well, that was a pretty quick pass. And that seems to be why they're bringing Gary St. Amant in. He felt like he was deserved to be a little bit further forward. The officials had a different opinion. And, well, we'll follow that. We'll continue to do so as Roger Slack giving him the 1 lap to go to start here.
Well, there was obviously some jockeying for position. When the yellow comes out, nobody can pass. Ralph, what's the situation on pit road?
Well, Loney radioed into his crews. We go back to green and told them that he didn't realize Mike was that far under him, and he kind of turned down into him.
Well, that's kind of the way we saw it, but I mean, clearly the two of them were going at it side by side, and the net result is both of them ended up being spun out.
Pretty hard to place blame on that incident. Yes, he did turn down a little bit, but he also had the line going into turn number 1. But had he known that Mike was that far under, he'd have allowed some room, no doubt about it. They'd run each other clean all night.
Lost in the shuffle, of course, is the fact that Bob Seneker has inherited the lead, and the only one that can challenge him in the late going is the defending champion of this race. Hansen slowing severely on the backstretch. He's going to be out of it. Meanwhile, Steve Holtzhausen and Bob Seneker are going to go at it for the last 2 laps of this race.
And Steve Holtzhausen is closing on Bob Seneker rapidly as Pat Bordeaux has come to a stop off of in turn number 2. Now, once the white is displayed, you do race back to the checker. Bordeaux is safely off the racetrack as Hansen comes on pit road. We may have a battle for the win, for the lead, with 1 lap to go. Bob Seneker about 3-4 car lengths ahead of Steve Holtzhausen.
And apparently they're not done banging on each other back in the field either as Loney and Refner get together. We're in the final lap of the race. Bob Seneker needs to hold on for 2 more turns to take his victory here at Hawkeye Downs over the defending champion Steve Holtzhausen, and Holtzhausen will come up with a little too little and a little too late. Here's Brad Loney crossing the finish line after he had led from the pole and led quite a number of laps. So the celebration instead goes to the pit of the Johnsonville Sausage entry, and that is Bob Seneker's number 84. The winningest driver in the American Speed Association adds another tally to his long list by winning the Hawkeye Downs 300.
And it's a second victory in 1995 for Bob Seneker, who won from the pole at Jennerstown back in the month of June. The last couple of outings have not been especially rewarding for him. A 14th at Grand Rapids, and after starting outside pole at Brainerd, finished 38th after suffering an electrical fire.
Well, they say some would rather be lucky than good any day. Obviously, a little bit of luck and a lot of good. Bob Seneker winning the Hawkeye Downs 300 after Mike Eddy and